Hey, what's going on, everyone? Welcome to another BRAP. It is Friday, August the 2nd. I can't believe it's August already. This is crazy. The year is flying by. Think about this. Think about this. In 4 months, we'll be at the end of the year, which is crazy. But here we are. It's August 2nd. So I want to give a big shout out to everyone in the live chat. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. Appreciate it. Echo. You hear an echo? Echo. There's an echo. Where's there an echo? Oh, here we go. Okay, I got rid of the echo. You guys can hear me now? I think I got did I get rid of the echo? Is the echo gone? Yes, the echo's gone. Yeah, I realized that I forgot to mute one thing. So yeah, sorry about that. But I want to give a shout out to everyone in the live chat. And I want to give a shout out to the BRAP VIP members. They're in the live chat right now. Otacon Oscillant's here in the live chat. So thank you, Otacon, for being a BRAP VIP member. Remember, this month, if you're a BRAP VIP member, it's $2.99 a month. To be a BRAP VIP member, you get the opportunity to win a free giveaway from BRAP. So a game-related giveaway at that. So consider supporting the channel through the BRAP VIP subscription tier. Obviously, we appreciate the support as always. Please hit that like button, subscribe, and hit the bell notification so you're alerted when we go live if you haven't done those things already. But again, big shout out to everyone here in the live chat. It means a lot that you guys have shown up, spending your Friday evening, or some of us are down under, like here we're down under. I believe I think it's Saturday there, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong. But no, thank you so much again. And we do have a special guest with us this evening. We have Ramon Terrell. Ramon, you're the talented Ramon Terrell, I should add. Author, actor, voice actor. There's probably not a lot you don't do, Ramon, that you do well. But welcome back to BRAP, sir.
Hey, man, you're too kind. You're spoiling me. And I'd just like to I'd like to add that one thing that I do not do is draw. If it's not a stick figure, I couldn't draw to save my life. So there's that. But no, I appreciate it. Thank you so much for having me on the show. And I'm just trying to enjoy cling to summer as long as I can, because summers aren't as long up here as they are, in most places down south in the U.S. So yeah, it's a beautiful day and we got games.
Yeah, so so how long are the summers there? And you're out in the western part of Canada, right?
Yeah, West Coast, Vancouver, just basically above Washington, Oregon, California.
Gotcha. Okay,
it's the California of Canada.
Okay.
So they're saying my volume is low.
Oh, I
can turn my mic up.
Yeah, you might want to turn your mic up, Ramon.
How's that? Is that better? Can everybody hear me okay?
Yeah, let's give Ramon a quick sound check. Can everyone hear him okay?
Test. Test. Can everybody hear me okay?
I think it was Mr. Grimm who said they can't hear you.
Yeah. Well, I'll just keep going just in case. But so the
hear what I understand very good. He can hear you very good. So.
Oh, okay, great.
Yeah, go ahead, Ramon. I'm sorry, man.
Oh yeah, no problem. So yeah, it's our summers typically start in, what is it? I can't remember when in June, but it's rainy and off and on slightly chilly until we start getting into June, and then from June typically starts cooling off in September. Sometimes if we have a long summer, we'll go all the way. It won't cool off until October, but typically maybe early to mid June to maybe mid September, and then after that, the temperature kind of goes off a cliff. So.
Oh wow, okay, yeah. But you know what's interesting about Vancouver? My understanding is that a lot of movies, TV shows are now filmed in Vancouver. Is that correct?
Oh, it's been that way for years. Even before I moved here, when a lot of the actors that I met after once I got into the industry, they're like, man, you missed the golden age. It was like they were just picking them off trees. It was like, if you were here, you were booking roles left and right. And then there was a drought, and the drought happened actually right before I moved here. And then a couple, maybe several years, maybe I don't know, 3-4 years after I was here in the industry, then it started picking up again, and it got really busy, and as busy as it had ever been. But you know, the paradigm is always not as good as it was before. Whenever it's you, at least that's how it was for me. You know, it's always the golden age, and then I get here, and it's like, oh man, okay, it's picked back up again. But man, it wasn't. If you were here back then, you probably have like 100 credit. Thanks.
they're just rubbing it in, Ramon. They're like, you missed the gold rush. No, but you know what's interesting though? It's I was listening to NPR a couple weeks ago, and they were talking about Hollywood and the cost of. And it made me think about the video games. And I know this isn't a topic, but I was thinking about you actually, Ramon, because they were talking about Hollywood and how the cost to make movies and TV shows has gone up here in the U.S. And so what a lot of studios have done now is they've started shooting in Canada because Canada will give tax credits. The labor cost is cheaper there, et cetera, et cetera. Even doing things overseas compared to like doing something like in a Hollywood backlot. So I thought it was kind of interesting because, you know, we talk about the costs of development, rising costs. And I've always, we've talked about it on this show that perhaps that is a way, that is something that maybe studios will start doing. I mean, they are in a sense. I mean, we do have some studios in Canada, Montreal. I'm not sure. There may be some in Vancouver. None come off the top of my mind. You may be more aware of that than I am, but there are studios in Canada as well, and other parts of the globe. Where the cost of labor to develop games is cheaper than here in the U.S., and that could be a way to kind of offset development costs. But that was kind of the conversation on NPR centered around. They were talking about Netflix, and the cost of doing business for Netflix has increased. And so one of the things Netflix is doing now is looking at like places like Canada to kind of offset those development or those costs to create content. So I thought it was a very fascinating conversation. Yeah.
Oh yeah, no, I've worked on Netflix stuff. I mean, from film to video games, there's studios up here. There's 3, 4, I think, major big studios up here, and then they're actually building, I think, 1 or 2 more. So yeah, there's. It's funny because there's so many shows that take place in like LA or California, but they're filmed here. And like with video games, same thing. There's a Capcom presence up here. EA is probably a half-hour drive from where I live. And then
is that EA Redwood?
No, I don't know what the
no, Redwood was the sub name referring to the geographic location of that studio. So
gotcha. Okay,
in Redwood.
So that would be Northern California then.
All right.
Sounds like Northern California.
On that note, I do want to welcome Logic, Old Man Logic, because he was around for the first #1 release issue of Game Informer and Game Pro. What's up, Logic?
Yeah, I'm gonna have to. I mean, you were like seconds away from me invoking my sign-off clause for like. I presume that what was going on was you guys stalling until I got here, because way too much gaming news happened this week for us to be taking up time talking about Redwood Forests and Vancouver and.
Hey, there's a reason for it. There's a method behind the madness, Logic. We'll get to that in a second, but go ahead.
I have to check my subcontract for creative license. Like I don't believe this is what I signed up for.
Oh,
but we got to give everybody a chance to shuffle in and get their hot chocolate ready and everything.
Exactly.
Not this week. You guys should have covered like 2 news stories already by now. I would have just missed it.
No. Yeah, no, but no, that's great, Ramon. Again, it was a great conversation. NPR made me think about you, Ramon, and just kind of, I was parlaying that to the gaming industry. But yeah, speaking of news topics, we have with us Game Logic. Logic, how are you this evening, sir?
I'm 27 minutes late, and the show is at least 25 minutes late. So how I am is determined by how quickly you go.
Well, we're late too, by the way. We're late too. We're actually like 15 minutes late as well. So, but Ramon, I do. One of the reasons I want to have you on too is because there is another strike happening, and so the SAG, I can never pronounce the SAG AFTRA Video Games actor strike over AI concerns. And again, I thought about you. I know you do some voice acting work here in the gaming industry, but this seemingly is over AI concerns, which is I get it. The video game actors say AI threatens their jobs. So what have you heard on your end there?
Basically, it's the same type of thing that happened in the film industry. You have these studios, and a lot of it is they want to bring you in, pay you for the work that you do on Tuesday, and then train AI on you, on your voice, and then they can replicate it without having to pay you for future performances. Imagine take for instance, God, why am I drawing a blank? The modern Kratos, the most recent Kratos, voice of most recent Kratos. I'm drawing a blank on his name. I can't believe it. But just like imagine, he goes in to record Kratos, and then when Ragnarok comes out, he doesn't get paid for it, but they replicated his voice using AI, and all that dialogue had nothing to do with him. That's the kind of thing that, that's a big concern, because they will do it. Like they are constantly trying to look at ways to cut cost, and it's a very clinical, robotic mindset of, well, if we have AI, we can cut them out. Okay, I got people saying that I'm still low, and my mic is turned up all the way to the max.
That's weird. Let me see.
Yeah, it is because
Where is your logic?
Not just in Discord, but when I listen to the YouTube live stream too.
It was low?
No.
So I know some people are saying they can hear you, Ramon, okay. There's a way to turn up maybe your mic settings in Windows, assuming you're using Windows.
I'm on a Mac.
Maybe there's a way to do that.
I do it through Discord, because
maybe Discord, I'm not sure. All right, well, you're trying to figure that, Ramon. Let me get the super chat from Craig, the tech guy, with the $2 super chat. Says, sup, BRAP? Shout out to the panel. Thank you for that super chat, Craig, the tech guy. So who else is saying? I'm trying to see who in the live chat saying your volume's down. Oh, that was Mr. Grimm who said that earlier.
Someone else said it.
Oh yeah, I see. Gentle Stone, but I think other people are saying they hear. Yeah, see, Hero Down Under says I can hear him clearly. Otacon Asa says I think he sounds fine. I don't know. Maybe it's, I don't know. I'm not sure. Okay. Yeah, but go ahead. Just, if you could, see Chad Stud saying sounds fine. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, go ahead with the. Okay. We're talking about the voice actor strike here.
Yeah. So basically, I mean, it's things like that. I mean, the start of it, what really, and it sent a chill down my spine when I first saw it. As cool as it was, when we saw the General Tarkov in Star Wars long after he passed away, and then when we saw Princess Leia, and we heard her voice, we heard the voices, we saw the performances, and that was all, it was CG and everything, and granted you could tell the difference, but it was very, very close. So it's things like that where it's just like, even after you're gone, if there's nothing in contract, they use your voice. Or when you're still here, some mega blockbuster game ships, and they're making millions, and in cases billions, hundreds of millions and billions, and you're over here auditioning for your next job. You know what I mean? It's just like it's things like that where it's, they just, if they're allowed to, they will pay you once, and they will use your work for other works that you didn't work on indefinitely and make money off of you without paying you a dime. Like, the entertainment industry it's a trip, man. It's a trip. Like, all encompassing, it's a trip.
Yeah.
Like, they will literally just run you raw. So that's what the strikes are about, is basically AI replicating our work.
No, that's fair. I mean, I think if you are lending your voice and then you're not getting any if AI is duplicating what you've done, you're not getting compensated for that. I think that's a fair. I think that's a valid concern. AI, the movie Terminator, and more recently The Matrix has ruined the idea of AI for me. Like, I'm terrified of AI. I am concerned one day at the age of 70, I'm going to wake up and I'm going to hear a news bulletin that says Skynet has become self-aware. Like that just, I'm convinced that's going to happen. Or I remember what Morpheus said in The Matrix. He said something to the effect that in 2000 or whatever it was, year 2000 and something, man basked in its glory as it gave birth to AI, and then we became batteries. And that's my biggest concern. I think that's going to happen. Who knows? I could be wrong, and I hope I'm wrong. So, but no, that's interesting, Ramon. That again, I think that's a reasonable concern. It's like, okay, well, if you're using my likeness, I'm not getting paid for it, but then I'm out here trying to look for a job to make ends meet. Well, yeah, I mean, you should, in my opinion, at least, be receive compensation for the use of your voice or the likeness of your voice. So,
yeah, it's the reason why we get paid a lot for a single job is because you don't know when your next job is going to be. So at my tier, I can spend 4 hours or 5 or 6 or 8 hours on set for a day player role and make more in that one day, anywhere from, I get paid a minimum of 8 hours, and then over that I get paid overtime. I can work for 30 minutes on a scene and go home and make more during that scene than I make at my job in a month. But the catch is, my next job might not be for another 6 to 8 or 12 months or longer. So,
ooh, man, yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's like, it's like, we already, until you really start to get momentum and you start to hit and they want to book you for everything, you're already like, busting your ass trying to get a job. And then they want to make money off of the work that you did on future stuff without paying you. So it's just like, dude, come on, man.
Yeah.
Like,
we can't do that.
Well, the thing is people want these amazing experiences. I mean, how many times have you experienced something, whether it was a film or a video game, and you're like, yeah, I mean, it was okay, but the voice performances were kind of so-so, or their acting was all right, or the acting was really bad. It's like, we want these amazing performances. That takes class, which class takes investment. It takes time. You know what I mean? There's a lot of time, there's a lot of investment, there's a lot of hard work that goes into that. And these studios, they want these, banger performances out of us, but then they don't want to pay us. So it's just like, you have to really kind of mentally emotionally take it in stride, or you'll just go crazy.
Yeah. So they don't want to pay you. They don't want to do the right thing, kind of like PlayStation, and how they treat their consumers. But that's another conversation. So no, thank you for sharing that, Ramon. I appreciate your perspective, because you have done voice acting in video games. So it's going to be interesting to see this thing, where this thing goes. We know that AI was an issue with Hollywood as well. So it's going to be interesting, again, to see, where this thing lands, if there's some kind of compromise, some kind of agreement. I do want to move on to, I tell you what, this has been a pretty, very packed week with news as relates to gaming, but some very shitty announcements this week. And one of them is Game Informer. After 33 years of bringing us the latest news and reviews and insights to the ever world of gaming, Forte's company, GameStop, has decided to shut Game Informer down. And, I, for many years, read Game Informer, and one of the reasons why I ended up subscribing to, forget what it was at GameStop, they would give you the, I forget what it was, like the rewards program or whatever it was at the time. They would include a subscription of Game Informer, and I was receiving Game Informer up until a couple months ago, and I loved, and I would get the print copies because they would give you the option if you want to receive the digital version or the print, and I would go with the print because that's what I grew up doing, reading print media, and wow, I mean, just wow, it's and also the website's down. There's a lot of content creators on Game Informer who say they can't access their site anymore. They can't log in. I mean, it's terrible news. I mean, I think my concern with gaming media, I know we've talked about this quite a bit on the show. Logic, you've been very vocal about this, that the media has kind of changed, and not for the better. It seems to be based around sensationalism, appealing to fandom, as you've said on the show on many occasions, Logic. And it's just one of those. And Game Informer, I thought, was a great magazine. I really enjoyed reading it. I felt that they had really good coverage, good previews, reviews of games. It's just a shame to see it go away.
And their podcast was good too. I mean,
I was gonna say, yeah.
Look, I mean, not to throw shade at anyone, including ourselves. I mean, this is self-deprecating as well. Like you tune into their podcast and they're not concerned about like how consumers are reacting to stuff. Like they focused on the news. They focused on their conversations with developers. They focused on, kind of what was going on in the market. I mean, and I hate to put it this way, but a lot of, and some of it's generational, but you have a lot of journalists that like make. And I'm not at all saying that prices are good right now, but you have a lot of journalists that's become a shtick. That anything so much as like a 5-cent movement in a thing is a thing to yell and scream about. And I'm like, you're not putting it in perspective. You're not looking at the market. I mean, and they'll even say this thing about indies, right? About things where prices are arguably not very high, and so like there's just no. I mean, the Game Informer was one of the last, I think, bastions of actual journalism that was going along, alongside GameIndustry.biz was what I said today. You could disagree with that, if you haven't liked some of the articles, GameIndustry.biz has written.
No, you can't disagree with GameIndustry.biz. I'm sorry. I mean, they are the last bastions of true gaming journalism. But I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Well, I think there's general confusion, and again, I think it's largely generational about the difference between a news article and an op-ed. So it seems like people don't grow up being taught, what the difference is from a journalistic perspective. But at any rate, I mean, to me, again, the fact is that those two sites, those two outlets, with Game Informer, the magazine, those two sites didn't trade on outrage, whereas I feel like every other site does to some extent, and often, most of them, to a pretty large extent. And so it's just unfortunately sad to see them now taken off the landscape, and that leaving GameIndustry.biz, because now GameIndustry.biz has been acquired by IGN Entertainment. So I mean, I just think it's a matter of time, right, before their content starts skewing in a certain way. So it's unfortunate.
Logic, and not to get on my soapbox here, but I guess like we have enough like rage culture and everything, politics, anything you could think of, right? Like I don't want to see that in gaming, and I say that I don't want to see it when we were seeing it. We're seeing it in gaming media. It sucks because gaming is how I grew up. Gaming was an escape from all that bullshit, all that noise, right? And now it feels like it's not an escape from that in some sense. Like it should be. It's an entertainment medium. It's in a way, and again, I grew up playing video games to kind of escape things or reality, whatever the case is, to kind of, put my head down and just enjoy this entertainment medium that's great. And when I grew up, it wasn't it wasn't like this fueled by rage culture and this everyone seems to get mad these days about anything with gaming, you know? Oh my God, this person's ugly in a video game, or this person is, or it's woke. You know, it's like, wait a minute. Like, when did identity politics start permeating into game? Like, why? This is supposed to be this media is supposed to be a way to escape all that noise.
The minute I hear the word or see the word woke, I automatically discount what the person is saying.
I do too.
Well, I mean, it became that way as soon as they realized that sold more than actually like being educational and informing people. I mean, it's frustrating as somebody who works in technology to hear, like, again, I mean, I've told the story 1,000 times, right? I grew up, the gaming media I felt was in the business of trying to inform people about like technical topics and financial topics. That sparked an interest in me. I wound up going down those paths, and now that's what I do for a living, right? I have one foot in finance and one foot in technology today. I mean, I spent time with both feet in one of those two lanes, you know, and now I'm in a position where I can straddle both. But I mean, like, today you listen to podcasts and you read articles, and you know, I remember, and again, I was listening to the gaming stuff, and I was also listening to the tech stuff, but I was also listening to things like Maximum PC, which was firmly, you know, about computer technology, but, you know, almost entirely for the purposes of gaming. And I remember, you know, being, you know, listening to those podcasts and hearing like the technical details of software development, of storage, of GPUs, of all that stuff. And today you listen to that stuff, and what I'll hear is, well, I'm not an expert, right, in software development, or I'm not an expert in project management. And I'm like, okay, great, you guys admitting that you're not experts in it, but you damn sure, you know, offer your opinion on the matter without so much as having a guest on the show who is actually steeped in those matters, or doing an interview, or going out and gathering the information. It's just, they just skate right by it, and they don't attempt to speak to it in an effort to inform people, but they definitely, you know, tell people why, you know, that there's a reason for them to be outraged. And I think, you know, 20 years ago, we used to look at outrage as to whether, you know, what was the justification for it, and then look at, you know, all the parameters that surrounded it. So, like I said, it's just become a vastly diluted landscape. You know, we've slowly seen, you know, we saw GamePro go away, we saw EGM go away. You know, now, you know, we've seen Game Informer go away, and tons of others along the way. You know, Edge Magazine is still out there, and the U.S. variant of Edge Magazine was Next Gen or Next Generation, and we saw Next Generation go away. So, you know, all in the name of speed, and now the name of speed is so much that they can't even be bothered with the facts, right? Or you know, or the domain, you know, specifics about the topics that they're talking about. It's just, you know, here's the thing that happened. Should you be outraged about it or not?
Yeah, I'm over the outrage in video games. And, you know, this one was a punch in the gut for me because, again, I mean, I was getting the print copies, and, you know, there's a bit of nostalgia there for me as well, but it was an informative magazine that talked about gaming. It wasn't this thing that you see, like, it's funny, I go on YouTube, we're talking about Star Wars Outlaws here, but I see people saying, this looks really bad. What the fuck is this? I'm like, really? It's a fucking video game. Like, it's fine if you think it doesn't look good, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the game's going to be bad either. You know? And that's the thing. Everyone jumps to that conclusion, like that low-hanging fruit. Oh, yeah, like, it's terrible. It could still be a great game.
I've seen people say something looks like trash, and I'm like, am I looking at the same thing? Because this looks like so much fun. And they're like, well, look at that explosion. That explosion looks horrible. I'm like, okay, dude. Like, okay, the explosion doesn't, you know, the explosion could look better. But, like, are we really going to write the whole game off and say it looks like garbage because, you know, a couple of things aren't done, like, super, like, edge of the world quality? Like, it's like all or nothing. With a lot of people, it's just this all or nothing thing.
Well, this is the frustrating thing, and you know, going back to the Game Informer topic, I mean, as BRAP mentioned, like, I continue to get Game Informer right in an age where arguably, you know, the print media has become, you know, less relevant. You know, some people think because it delivers so late in comparison to the web.
I love my Wall Street Journal, by the way. Thank you.
But I continue to get the Game Informer, and one of the main reasons that I did was because when they would run a hands-on article, you would read it and it would actually be at detail. right? Like, how is this game shaping up? And it would be at a deep specific detail. The thing you mentioned, Ramon, and like again, we get a lot of this. Like I get frustrated a lot because, and again, since I entered kind of this YouTube circuit, a couple of years ago, we get the, oh well that doesn't look that great. I'm like, you're looking at it at 4K 30 over a live stream, right? At probably maybe 15 megabits per second. So somebody looking at that should be able to look at that and say, well, I'm seeing what I see, but that doesn't necessarily translate to what I'm going to see on my screen. Probably still, I mean, it's good that they're getting us this information, but as I always say, the proof is in the pudding when the game actually comes out, and we have become such an outrage-based society that everything, and I hate it, like everything is about, killing a game while it's still in production pipeline. Like I've never understood that, and I'm going to say something, and I'm sure offenders are going to get pissed, but like I don't care. But like, look, there are content creators who spend a lot of time, right, doing screenshots, doing image comparisons and video comparisons, and I'm like, and half the time it's one of the games is out, like in being sold on retail shelves and has been patched, and they're comparing it to a game that's in production pipeline, and I'm like, who does that benefit? Like, what is the value of that comparison?
There's no value in that logic. I mean, like there's no value because like we don't even know if that's going to be if that's an accurate representation or the final representation of the game.
Right. Exactly.
I've been saying for, sorry.
No, go ahead, Ramon.
No, I've been saying for a while that a personal theory is I think a large portion of the human population does not know how to be happy. And if you pay attention, the better things are, the more things people look to complain about. I mean, it's arguable, of course, it's all opinions, but in my opinion, we are in a golden age of gaming. Yes, games come bugged out. Yes, games launch broken, but we have more variety of content and price and platform and everything than we have ever had in the history of gaming.
Thank you.
Long for the good old days back when games were more creative in the Genesis and the NES and the Super NES. There are devs right now. You can go right now and find those games. If you like big AAA blockbusters, we're drowning in them. If you like AA games, Vanishers is amazing. And you know what I mean? Like we have so much variety of whether it's price or whether it's content. But people search for things to pick apart, and they just pick apart and dissect, and it's sad because we're freaking blessed, dude. Like the fact that we can afford all of this stuff, you know what I mean? And we're like we literally, even if I had the money to buy every single game I want, I don't have the time. We have more content than we can possibly consume, and a lot of it is good, but that explosion and that smoke disappeared too quick.
Well, the interesting thing, Ramon, to your point, I mean, like people take for granted, and maybe this is because it's funny, Logic. I talk about history a lot, and I always think in our conversations about history that history is so important. It's such a great lesson. It's something I think people ignore too often, because I think if people study the history of video games, they would really appreciate what Ramon just described. Because back in the days, there was no Game Pass, there was no day and date, there was $50 games, and that's pretty much it. I'll
tell you something else. There was no more than one or two bangers in a year. Like we weren't buying like 10 and 15 games and 20 games in a year. We got maybe 2, maybe 3 max. There weren't all these games, dude. Like when we were kids, dude, we didn't have all these games.
No, and the thing is, like, we were. I mean, there was all these. I mean, we didn't have there was PC, console. There was no mobile at the time. There wasn't indie games at cheaper price points. There wasn't free to play business models in gaming. I mean, there was really like only one way to really consume gaming, and it's really broadened its appeal and has been very I forgot what I was going to say now. Like today, it's just very like different. Like where the level, I feel like the level, the barrier of entry is much lower than when it was when we started playing video games, and those things should be celebrated. I don't think they're celebrated enough. I think it's always this this negativity, this rage culture of, oh my God, you know, so and so doesn't look like this game, or that looks like trash, or hold the L. You know, it's not about like, oh, you know, like this game looks interesting. And look, and that's fair. If you think a game doesn't look good, launch, that's fine, but don't completely write it off. At least have the awareness to understand, okay, you know what, this may not be the final product. I'll reserve final judgment for when the game actually comes out.
Yeah, I mean, well, as you know, as it goes, it's easier to tear something down than it is to build something, and people, it's a momentum thing, and the negativity builds momentum, and
yeah,
that's where people default to, is they're like, oh yeah, that looks good, but what about that? You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, and I'm sorry, I got to address something live chat. And you are part of the problem here, Knights of the Realm. You caught BRAP on a Friday night, and so BRAP on a Friday night's a little bit loose. And you're part of the problem, Knights of the Realm. You come in here, and you're like, hey, well, you know, how do you Pody sit here and have nothing else to talk about? Like, you don't love gaming. Get out of here. You're not welcomed here. You don't care about video games. You want to come in here and console work because you have a small PP. So go somewhere. Please leave. You're not welcomed here. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Ramon.
oh no. But yeah, it's just you know, and people, they default into the negative. No matter how good things are, they find something to pick apart, and it's really too bad, because you know, we're living in an embarrassment of riches. I mean, we have so much. If you're blessed enough to be able to game on multiple platforms, there are more games than you can possibly play ever. If you're only on one platform, even if you're on Xbox, where, you know, a lot of games are skipping it, unfortunately, there's still tons of games that you can play.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like,
if you subscribe to Game Pass, you have hundreds of games you can play.
Yeah. So,
yeah, what?
You know, all you can do is just, I'm sorry, Logic. No, I was going to say, all you can do is just protect your peace and enjoy your games, because life's too short and we have so much.
Yeah, and I don't want to. I mean, I don't want to say that there's nothing wrong in the industry, right? And that it's all Tiffany complex.
Yeah, of course.
No, it's not. But I think it's better though, Logic, than, like, it's not perfect to your point, but I think it's a bit more inviting. There's more options than when we were growing up. Yeah. Yeah,
people definitely have more choice, and that's the point I was about to harp on. I followed a new. I just came across a content creator today, 8-bit Closed Fist. And I don't know if, you know, people know him or agree with everything he says, but you know, a lot of the things that he talks about are things that are very reflective of what I think, which is that, you know, his point in his video that he posted today is, look, he gets it. Like, people have things about the industry that they're dissatisfied with, but then the problem should be, you know, and I can't see what Knights of the Realm is saying. He's probably coming here with maybe foolishness before, and so I have him blocked. You know, but if Knights of the Realm or whomever, like, feels like the industry is bad, like games are broken, AAA games are coming out, you know, with too many bugs, you know, that they're not performant, etc. I mean, I have my thresholds. I mean, I still, like, Star Wars Jedi Survivor, like, that game just unacceptable. Like, came out, wasn't performant, even after the patch was applied like 6 months later. Still, in my opinion, wasn't performant. Didn't have the graphical fidelity that it should have for a studio of the caliber of Respawn. So I don't run around raising that game up. But, you know, if for the people who feel like, I see a lot of people obviously purporting, you know, we need more indies, we need more AA games. I'm like we've constantly said on this show, and it's great, you know, another Darksiders is being developed now, was announced today during the THQ Nordic 2024 showcase, you know, and again, that's an interesting point, right? THQ Nordic 2024 showcase today. How many gamers knew that? How many gamers went and watched it? Those are the people who are making that type of content, right? Making AA games.
I wasn't aware.
Wait. I wasn't aware either. I need to.
Logic was throwing shade at me earlier today.
But my thing is, like, you guys weren't aware, but you guys aren't necessarily one of the people running around shouting and screaming about the industry is so bad, tear it down. Everything needs to be done differently. Here's my point: is there are pockets where things are being done differently, but those games don't get raised up. Dungeons of Hinterberg, Flintlock, and Kunitsugami, I believe Kunitsugami, all three of those games are on Game Pass. Right? Should be getting played to the nines. I haven't seen a peep about Dungeons of Hinterberg anywhere on my timeline. And I do, and when I say I haven't seen a peep, that means I've gone out and looked. I see people tweeting about Dungeons of Hinterberg. I don't see people tweeting about playing Dungeons of Hinterberg in Game Pass. I'm sure there's some out there, but my point is
I haven't seen it.
Yeah, that's a game, that's an indie title that's of the exact type of ilk that people are saying need to be made for people who are saying, KFS isn't attractive, AAA games are the problem, people should be making exclusives. Like, again, the industry is where it is because people don't put their money where their mouth is.
Facts.
That's one of the reasons. Or B, the people who are making all the complaints aren't grasping the awareness to look at the rest of the market and understand that the rest of the market is saying that it's okay. Now, I'm not going to say that game quality on launch day today is what it should be. I think I've coined the phrase on the show that, like, if you buy a game on launch day, you're buying the CFO's version, right? You're buying the marketing team's version, right? Yeah. The development team's version is the one that comes out probably about a month or two later, right? So, but if you feel games are broken,
that's called the bean counter edition,
right? Right. I'm like, if that's the way you feel, like, align with what 8-Bit Closefist is saying, and don't buy the games on day one. Don't buy them on launch day. I used to always buy games, particularly on PC. I used to always buy games like about a month after they came out, after they had their first couple of patches. I'm like, speak with your wallet, send your signal to the companies, because this is one of my other problems with the social media crowd. The social media crowd, and in particular the people that typically stand against us on a daily basis, are the people who say, "Oh, we have the ability to dictate to these companies what we want and what they like." No, you don't. You're not via social media. You do have the ability to do that, but you do that with your wallet, because that's the only thing that they actually care about. Right? If they when Sony started giving back refunds for Helldivers 2, that's not because a bunch of people went onto social media and cried about it. Sony did that because they chose to, and that's the only time a multi-billion-dollar, multi-trillion-dollar company is like a bear, is like a grizzly bear in the woods. If it walks away from you, it's not because it has to. It walks away from you because it chose to. Right? And that's what you need to recognize. Right? If you want to send a different signal to the market, send it with your wallet. So the people who want different stuff, buy different stuff. We constantly hear, and I'm sorry, I'm going to get off my soapbox, and I'm going to pick on the Xbox crowd for a little bit, just because they're an example. They're not the only ones, but they're the ones that are the most poignant. We say that we want more indies. We say that we want smaller games. And then the same exact crowd goes after developers on Twitter and says, "Oh, you didn't put your game in Game Pass. That's a miss." Like, developers aren't going to start making more indie games and taking more risks if their feeling is that the market is sending them a signal that nobody's going to bother with it unless it goes in Game Pass. Yes, Game Pass is a bootstrap. Particularly for a new studio, it helps you out that first time, maybe even that second time. But there are plenty of developers who look at the business model of their game and say, well, Game Pass isn't the thing for me, I'm going to sell it. And then, we have people sending a signal on social media saying that, well, nobody's interested in it. So then, so at any rate, the whole point is that they're just duplicitous messages that run around. People need to true up, right, and actually behave as a consumer in the same way that they speak on social media.
Yeah, forgive me if I've told this story before. I'll keep it short just in case. But a really good friend of mine, Ari Salvatore, huge in the fantasy genre, Kingdom of Amalur. He was behind a lot of that game, like the story side of it, I believe. And he has one of the most arguably one of the most beloved characters in epic fantasy. And a fan was, he had some people that were complaining, like, why you always write Dritz, his dark elf, why you always write Dritz, you're always writing Dritz, how come you don't do anything different? And then one person on his message board, back when there were message boards before we had like streaming and all that, he was like, "Well, have you read my Demon Wars saga? It's really quite different in tone and everything else from my Forgotten Realm stuff." And I'm like, "Oh yeah, I've heard of that. I haven't gotten to it yet. Do you know when the next when your next Dritz book's gonna come out though? Like true story." So one minute they're complaining that he writes just the same stuff, and then the next minute when he says, "Well, I have different stuff," and they're like, "Oh, okay, yeah, I'll get to that. I haven't gotten to that," and then they ask for the same stuff. Hello, am I still here?
Yes, yeah, Ramon.
Oh, okay. But yeah, it's so it's a large, just like basically what you were saying. Logic is, people need to, you know, we don't need to yell and scream about it. All we need to do is say, "I don't like this. I'm not going to support it," and then don't.
Right.
Be civil about it. Yelling and screaming and and hollering and everything doesn't do anything. Be civil and then act on what you say you're going to do. And it's funny because I was joking with me and Eric Jackson. We were joking because I was talking about Star Wars Outlaws and how it looks so good, and I was like, man, day one, and then parentheses ish. We call it the day one
Right.
ish.
We always hold that -1 in the pocket just in case we need to take it off the
table. Exactly. Because it looks amazing, but we're gonna hang back, and that's I don't. There's no reason, especially in this digital age, when you don't have to worry about stuff selling out. There's no reason to pre-order anything. I mean, sometimes they'll put bonuses and everything, and if the bonus is big enough, you go ahead, pre-order it, and then sit back and wait for the patches. But 99% of the time, there's no reason to pre-order something, so I'll wait, see how it launches. A lot of times it launches in not the best state. I'll wait a few weeks to a few months, in some cases even a year, and get the best version of it. And a lot of the times it might even be on sale. But if not, I mean, I'm not going to buy these games day one if they're going to launch in this horrible condition. But if it launches in a good condition, I'll get it day two, or I'll still get it day one if it launches and I see that, it's not a bugged out mess. So, I mean, that's what we need to start to send these folks the messages. But we have to send that message with the verbiage: "This is unacceptable the way this game has launched, and I will buy it when it's fixed." Don't just not buy it and don't say anything, because then they're gonna be like, "Oh, these games don't sell anymore." We have to let them know why we're not buying their game. And if they fix it, we will buy it. So we have to do those two things. Otherwise, they're gonna be like, "Yeah, these games don't sell anymore." And then we'll start getting stuff we don't want.
Yeah, and those are kind of the two kind of final messages I want to loop back in on. Is what we're saying partially is again this is incentivized by the loss of now Game Informer, who I think was one of the outlets who did exactly this type of thing. There's a ton of energy about out in the gaming conversation about the negativity, and that's fine, particularly if it's in the vector of informing consumers. But by the same token, the other thing that needs to go along with it is the positivity. And what I mean by that is kind of some of the stuff that we've talked about, which is when there is a good game, when there is an indie game, like if you're concerned that there are things that are on the market that you don't like and there are trends that you don't like, then don't just tear down the stuff that you don't like. Raise up the stuff that is in the vein of the things that you want, right? The indie games, games of a certain genre or whatever. I often comment about how I can post content on my timeline, from me playing, again, I'll, pick on Xbox, for me playing an Xbox title, and I'll have no one mention a comment at all. But the moment I say something that people interpret as negative about Xbox, all of a sudden, right, I get 50 people on my timeline, like flies to poop, So, and then the other thing is, the other thing I posted today is, one thing that we need to normalize is when developers are on social media, because there aren't that many of them on social media anymore. And often when they are on social media, I tell them you shouldn't be on social media. But when people when developers are on social media, and there's so many people who fly up in there saying your game's trash, or like I saw people responding to Moon Studios today for No Rest for the Wicked, and one of the comments was like, you issued this update and you basically did nothing, like it's still all the same. But all this time you didn't change anything. And I'm like, okay, what is actionable about that statement? Like, what is the studio supposed to go off and do different, right? If you like all of the systems, then comment about the systems that you like. If there's something that you did want changed, then give them the feedback about the things that you want changed and why. And so I think one of the things we need to also work on in the gaming community is we need to give constructive, actionable criticism when we speak to developers, or when we're just yelling and shouting, like, and not just say the game's trash. Like, again, these characters aren't beautiful. Okay, what am I supposed to go and do about that? Am I supposed to go make everything look like Stellar Blade? Is that going to satisfy you? And is that going to cause you to buy the game? So, again, those are just some of the things we need to do.
But Logic, how about the idea of just being aware that not every game is for you? I think that's part of the issue too. Everyone thinks that every game should be for them. And that's not the case. We all have different tastes. We all like different things, have different expectations of video games. Not every game's going to be for us.
Yeah, that's the catch-22, right? Because we've kind of talked about both cases and both cases in terms of where that dynamic is either you lacking self-awareness, right, and not understanding what the rest of the market is responding to.
Word out of my mouth.
Or you failing to act right in the way that would influence the market to react differently. I mean, it's always and often a mixture of both. And I think the problem is that people sometimes don't realize what, again, the crowd that shouts, exclusives are bad. And I'm like, okay, I'm looking at the NPD charts. Right? Exclusives are bad. Sure seems to be a lot of exclusives on the NPD charts. I guess that must mean people are buying them. So, and again, we go all these people who have sounded off about, exclusives aren't good for you. I'm like, okay, are exclusives nicotine? Are they a controlled substance? Like, because again, people are certainly buying them. So some of them have decided that they're good for them in some kind of way, or that they're desirable. Yeah, I don't get it. So
I don't either. No.
No, that's all that is just emotional statements based on someone who has wrapped themselves in a bow around their given platform, declared that their platform is the absolute undisputed best and that the other platforms are trash. But at the same time, deep down inside, they really want to play that game that's on the other platform that they hate and refuse to buy. So then they say exclusives are not good for anyone. Because why would anybody declare that exclusives aren't good for anyone if they can just play them? There's nothing barring you from playing them. And if you're not in a financial position where you can own more than one platform, that's understandable. But to gloss over the fact, and this is something, I want to say it's common sense, maybe it's not, but exclusivity is what differentiates you from your competitor. It's why Hyundai's electric vehicles have this setting where when you take your foot off the gas, it slows down and it saves on your brakes and also contributes to brake regeneration. There may be other vehicles that have that technology. I haven't, I'm not sure.
I don't know, Ramo. That sounds like trash.
Yeah,
Hyundai
who wants that?
Who asked for that? Hyundai should hold an L. Who asked for that?
Yeah, they should hold an L. Right?
Yeah, all joking aside, like that's the mentality often the conversation around video games, So yeah, I mean, it's just but go ahead, Logic.
I'm sorry. Let's see if you were going to do the same segue that I was.
Hold on a sec here. Was I? Hold on a sec here. Yes. So I was going to talk about Star Wars Outlaws. That was going to be.
No, you were. I was going to segue to NPD, but you're back now. So go right ahead. The last thing I will say is on exclusives is, I mean, exclusives being desirable is why Ferrari doesn't provide engines for other car manufacturers.
I mean, you're not wrong. You're not wrong. I mean, we actually, you know what, Logic, we do NPD because you talk about exclusives. Actually, that's probably the better segue. I got to find Matt Piscatella here Good old Matt. And his MPD numbers are here we go. All right, so we have the Circada numbers per Matt Piscatella. Thank you, Matt, as always, for providing these numbers. Matt did tweet these out. He said content spending dropped 2% in June versus the year average to 4.1 billion. I'm sorry. June mobile content spending growth of 12% combined with a 4% increase in non-mobile subscription content spending was ultimately offset by a 26% drop in console content spending. And he said that the top 20 best-selling premium games, U.S. dollars, physical and digital, from digital data sharing publishers, excludes add-on content. Elden Ring, the From Gods, are at number 1. I'm not surprised by that, by the way, because the DLC, Shadow of the Erdtree. Number 2 was Call of Duty, Modern Warfare 3. 3 was Kingdom Hearts, Integrim Masterpiece. 4, and I know you tweeted this earlier, Logic, Shin Megami Tensei 5 Vengeance. Great to see that game, by the way. Great to see that.
Let's go.
Yeah. Hogwarts Legacy. That game is printing money. I mean, this is absurd. It is number 5. It was number 9 last month. Number 5. Minecraft came in at number 6. And MLB The Show, number 7. Oh, speaking of exclusives, Logic, here we go. Luigi's Mansion is number 8. EA Sports FC 24 is 9. Sea of Thieves is 10. And here we go. Another exclusive. Helldivers 2 is number 11. Oh, and another exclusive. Ghost of Tsushima, number 12. Oh, and another exclusive. Marvel Spider-Man 2 is 13. Oh, and another.
I don't know who that's helping. I don't know who that's helping.
Yeah. Oh, and another exclusive. Paper Mario, The 1,000-Year Tour is number 14. Mortal Kombat is 15. UFC 5 is 16. Oh, and another exclusive. Mario Kart 8, which is literally printing money and gold, is number 17. And The Elder Scrolls Online is 18. Dragon's Dogma 2 is 19. And Street Fighter 6 is 20. So those are the top 20 best-selling games for the month of June. And the best-selling games year-to-date, ending June 2024. Helldivers 2, I'm really surprised by this. Typically, we see Call of Duty kind of hold that top spot even after that November release into the new year. But Helldivers 2 is that number 1 right now. Talk about a lightning in the bottle moment for Sony. So Helldivers 2 is number 1 for best-selling game year-to-date, ending June 2024. Call of Duty is Modern Warfare 3 is number 2. Dragon's Dogma 2 is number 3. MLB The Show is number 4. Elden Ring, number 5. Oh, here's another exclusive. Final Fantasy VII Rebirth is number 6. WWE 2K24 is 7. Tekken 8 is 8. Madden NFL 24 is 9. Hogwarts Legacy is 10. That's that game is just printing money.
So I'm sorry, I'm not one of you guys in the Final Fantasy furrydom. Is that
wow?
Is that
you know what, Logic? I'm going to ignore that slander. But go ahead.
Hey, just like one of the campaigns is running on. You guys are weird.
Man. Hey, man. We not all of us look at dolphin porn, man. Come on.
Is Rebirth the first one or the second one?
This is the second one.
Okay, and is the first one on PC yet?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So the second one is it, and yet it's starting MPD. And I mentioned this because of one comment. Like I said, I think a lot of people wanted to jump on the bandwagon, as they often do, riding Matt Piscatella's coattails to, grab whatever data he puts forth that feeds their narrative. One of the comments was, if your lesson learned is if you're not porting your game to PC, you're leaving tons of money on the table. And so at first I was looking at this list and I was like, okay, yeah, PC, number 1 PC, number 2 PC, number 3 PC, number 4 PC. Oh, no, actually, number 4 is not. MLB The Show is also not on PC. So my point is that, yeah, maybe that's true for some cases, but it's not a universal truth. which again is the problem with a lot of the pundits pushing narratives. Like it is, as I often say, it is absolutely possible for two states of existence to exist at the same time. And so for some companies, for some plays, for some projects, it makes sense to port it to PC or to do concurrent development and also get it to PC at the same time. But for some, it doesn't. And not doing so.
What about the amortization schedule logic? What does that play into this too? I mean,
yeah. I mean, we've talked about that before. You expend all the capital expense associated with the cost of producing a game. You get that out. You work that off the books by recognizing revenue and depreciating the upfront capital investment over a number of years, and then you port it to PC, and then everything coming off of it. Then because you have a very small incremental cost, not a small, but you have an incremental cost to move the game to PC. In case it's not understood, it is easier from a project management perspective to complete a thing and then cross promote it to another platform than to try to be doing all of that at once. Because you have parallel defects coming in, you have defects coming in from one platform but not from the other platform. You're trying to make changes. You're not dealing with a stable foundation of code. So there's multiple reasons why it could be and will be more difficult to do concurrent development.
Logic, you got to stop, man. You're making too much sense. I need you to be angry about something.
Well, again, I mean,
exactly. It's just trash. It's trash.
Like I said, there are some projects where it does make absolute sense to go ahead and do that. But I think the point that we've tried to constantly promote on this show is that every development team, in particular every leadership team for a development team, is going to sit and have that conversation and make that call for every single project. And those dice don't always come up yielding the same numbers. There are different optics. There's different parts of a strategy. There's different schedule constraints. The talent of the teams are different, and so teams are going to make different decisions. And that's what I find frustrating is that there's no tolerance for Project A makes sense to go to PC at the same time that it's going to console. Project B, it doesn't make as much sense. We're going to go to console first and put it on PC a year or two later. We're going to outsource that to a porting studio or to, in the case of PlayStation, to Nix's. And there's no tolerance within the gaming community to allow for those two different approaches to equally make the most sense. It makes sense, right? Given time, place, and different variables. And that's the thing that just seems ridiculous to revolve a conversation around.
Well, that's because there's kind of a deficiency in the quote unquote community with regard to emotional and mental maturity, because they want everything to exist in a straight line, black and white. This is how it is, and very, very few things in life exist that way. You can't have everything just because you want it to be that way doesn't mean it's going to work that way. And then when you force it to work that way, then you get the type of issues that you just stated, a minute ago. Like, not everything exists, on the same spectrum. Just because it works good with one game doesn't mean it works good with another game. But everybody's like, no, if they can do it, then they can do it. It's like, it doesn't work that way.
Well, right. I mean, I've seen that comparison too. Oh, the fact that that Team A took course B means that there's no sense in every team not doing the exact same thing. I'm like, geez. I mean, again, people will have their opinions. It's interesting that there's
talent, time, and resources is what the late great Optimus Code would often tell us.
Yeah, and it's what I've quoted on here many times before. Look, sociologists doing a lot of work in recent history about the science of teams and how teams perform, particularly in the technology space, and a lot of those findings result in the notion that success is driven by kind of that combination, right? Talent teams and tools, but also in that scientific vein, time, personalities, right? The intermix of the team, the particular strategic imperatives, right? The resources that they had, the relationship between the leadership team and the right. And the whole point of this, and this is the thing that has particularly driven me nuts throughout my entire 30-year career in project management. It's always driven me nuts. The guy who comes into the room, reads you his resume, and then says, well, this is what we did on project B, so that's what we need to do here on this project, and we'll be successful. I'm like, no, you don't know that. That worked for your team in that time. And I've personally done a ton of things on projects in the past that worked great for that team. they were frequently epiphanies. They were things that I struck on. And many of them were ideas that I came up with in the middle of the night as I'm standing over some console or piece of software and something just struck me. But that doesn't necessarily mean that thing that I did is going to map to the conditions of success for the next thing that I do. We often call that USS last ship. Now, if I just did what I did on my last ship, then then this thing will be successful. But unfortunately, that doesn't work. Technology keeps moving is one problem. And a lot of these things, right, with reference to gaming projects, a lot of it is again based on technologies moving, but it's also because the market's constantly moving. You go back and listen to the GI Microcast that was a few weeks ago when they had Rami Ismail on and a couple of other developers from independent studios. And one of the things Rami said, he's like, look at the game of the year, last year, Baldur's Gate 3 for the most part. Actually, Baldur's Gate 3, the one that there is no argument about it being game of the year. It actually swept all 6 gaming award shows as game of the year. Yeah. I forget what was the game of the year before that. But he's like, when you look at the game of the year over multiple years, often you find a game and a title that nobody would have predicted that title being game of the year before. And if it performed commercially well, same thing. People wouldn't have predicted that the game, nobody predicted Power World, nobody predicted Helldivers 2. And he's like, the market is constantly moving and the demographics are constantly shifting. So part of the big problem in nailing the formula for success of a given game, and this is what I find frustrating sometimes right around the conversation around Concord, is a lot of people, and just so let me say this on air, I know that Slow-Mo and I have differed in our opinion of this. None of the things that I say about people making simple arguments or surface arguments or not digging, none of that applies to the opinion Slow-Mo has rendered. He is very knowledgeable about the industry. He has dove very deep into these details and the things that he's espousing, even though they may harmonize with some of the other arguments. They're not in this bucket of things that I'm throwing shade at, right? He's very hyper specific and very detailed about the case that he's made. But a lot of people are making these very common cases about, well, it's not the last thing that was successful, so therefore it's not gonna be successful. And I'm like, again, you look at what Remy said, and you look across the industry, and that's just often typically not the case, So, and then again, I go back to, as gamers, we bitch about things not being done differently, and then when a different thing comes along, then we tear it down because it's not the same thing as everything else. So I'll let you get back to the NPD chart. Sorry.
No, that's a great point, Logic. You're right. We in one hand we complain about the industry not taking chances, and then when they do, we shoot it down.
A good example of that is Death Stranding. Now, I really, really like Death Stranding. Slow-Mo didn't like Death Stranding.
Slow-Mo doesn't look. Slow-Mo's a dude, bro. He doesn't have good taste in gaming. But go ahead.
But I'll say this though: a lot of the people that are like, "Man, this is ridiculous," Kojima patting himself on the back, Death Stranding, what is this trash? Those people didn't play it. Slow-Mo didn't like a game that he played, and that's the thing. We always ask for something different, and just because they do something different doesn't mean that it works. But when people try something different, and we keep crying and asking about something different, you have to give it a chance. If it doesn't work, then it just doesn't work. But a lot of these people, they either just don't say anything. They don't try it. They don't say anything. And then when the smoke clears, they're like, how come we don't get anything original? Or something original comes out and then they chew it up and spit it out and they never even give it a shot. You know what I mean? So it's that's the thing that drives me nuts. Is like you're asking for something new. Someone does something different and you don't even give it a try. That's not to say it's always going to work, but they don't even give it a chance.
Yeah, well, that's a fair point.
So, Brad, before you go,
I got a super chat, but go ahead.
Yeah. Before you go back to the NBA, I need to check Warwana in the chat, friend of the show, just to be clear. I saw what you said earlier. My Ferrari example was about commercial vehicles sold to the average consumer. We are not talking about Ferrari giving engines to Formula One teams, the most expensive sport on the planet. I was specifically going to dive into that detail, but the conversation was moving. We were trying to get on to the next topic, so I let it go. But yes, I agree with you, but that is also very hyper-specifically exactly not the point that I was trying to make.
That's a good point. Speaking of Warwater, big shout out to Warwater, $2 super chat. Game Logic said, today we cook. Good show, guys. Thank you, Warwater, for that super chat. Appreciate it. But we'll get back to the MPDs here. I just lost them. We talked about the top 20 games. I'm not going to go into the games on specific platforms for the sake of time here. But Matt Piscatella did say that that the PlayStation 5 console was the leading console, and Switch number 2, and here we go. PlayStation 5 led the month's hardware market in unit and dollar sales. Nintendo Switch once again finished 2 in unit sales, while Xbox Series ranked second in dollars. These same rankings were reflected across 2024's total first half. So he also said June spending on accessories fell 7% when compared to a year ago to $204 million. Growth of the remote play device segment, PlayStation Portal, was offset by a 9% drop in gamepads. The PS5 DualSense wireless controller Midnight Black was June's best-selling accessory, while PlayStation Portal led accessories in dollar sales across 2024's first half. Hey, who asked for the PlayStation Portal? Who asked for that?
Well, I don't know who asked for it, but I know a lot of people stuck their necks out, got out over their skis, and claimed that it wasn't going to do well. So I said this, I was talking specifically about the DualSense Edge to a person that I was responding to in a thread. But like, again, if you listen to Twitter, the vast majority of Twitter gets market analysis in their attempt to do market analysis, gets it wrong because they think that the voice of Twitter is what's actually going on in the market. And the Twitter is at best, at an outside chance, is maybe representative of 14% of the market. And that's 14% of like the multi-billion-dollar market. So again, most of the things that people espouse on Twitter are not reflective of what the market is actually going to do and how they're going to respond. And you can see that here. You could also see it with the DualSense Edge numbers over the last few months.
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, we've talked about on this show, Twitter tends to get it wrong quite a bit in terms of the market or how the market might react to things. Sometimes they get it right. More often than not, they get it wrong. I do want to move on to Star Wars Outlaws because we did get the preview impressions. We were supposed to do the show Wednesday and unfortunately could not. But we were going to have Dreamcast guy join us. He did a preview of the game. But some of the things that stood out to me, some of the key gameplay mechanics of Star Wars Outlaws, a lot of stealth and hacking. Kay Vess is the main protagonist. We'll get to her in a bit. I didn't see what you saw, Logic, on social media about her appearance, but apparently that's a thing. So we'll talk about that here in a sec. But some of the highlights from the previews, some of the key gameplay mechanics, stealth and hacking. Kate uses this as a way to navigate missions. She could use it to kind of traverse vents. She uses a data spike, to hack doors. And I will say this: when I saw some of this in the first gameplay footage that they showed, that Ubisoft showed, and this is actually something that Dreamcast guy mentioned. I looked at this, and he said Splinter Cell, and I thought the same thing when I first watched the in-game play footage where she hacked a door and then was kind of like crouching and trying to stealth her way to take down an enemy. And I'm like, oh, wait a minute, this is like, as you know, Ubisoft is the developer behind Splinter Cell. I'm like, oh wait, this is Sam Fisher. This is very Sam Fisher-like. It's almost like they took the mechanics from Splinter Cell and applied it here to Star Wars Outlaws. And one of the things I thought was really positive in terms of the preview was that it didn't seem like the world, and this was my concern because I didn't like, I forget which is the when Ubisoft decided to start making the Assassin's Creed games really, really open world and kind of just dropping all these things on the map, things you can do. I was hoping that wasn't the case. Doesn't seem to be the case with this game. It presents the illusion of open world, but seems to be a little more focused, which I'm happy about. But the game does explore some of the underworld elements of the Star Wars universe. It's focusing on the crime syndicates thriving under the Empire. One of the crime syndicates that you'll be working with are the Hutts. But KVS is very much comparable to, if you've watched Star Wars. I'm assuming most people have, to the iconic character of Han Solo. So the game is releasing on August 30th of this year. You can get early access with the August 27th special editions. It's going to cost additional money. It's going to be interesting, Logic and Ramon, be interesting to see how well those special editions at early access sells. We did see what early access did for the NCAA football game, which I believe sold 2 million according to EA. But it sounds like the other thing too that I read from some of the early impressions previews of Star Wars Outlaws, that the game seems to kind of give a fresh take on the Star Wars universe, kind of get focusing on the underworld element, kind of the stealth mechanics, and some emphasis on some strong or some character-driven storytelling, which I'm all about in a Star Wars game. So, gentlemen, and I'll go to you, Ramon. Is this a game that's on your radar? Are you looking forward to this?
The only thing that could keep me from getting this right at launch is if it comes out and it needs some technical patches to get it up to speed. I was excited about this
because
game
you're playing it on PC.
Oh well, yeah. Yeah, it's the dark side of PC. We may get the better graphics and the better performance and whatnot, but sometimes we don't get the best port. And Jedi Survivor, I actually left a review on Steam for that with a thumbs down, and I was like, the content deserves a thumbs up and it deserves 100 stars, but the technical issues, it deserves a 0. Like it was deplorable how bad that port is. But anyway, I digress. Back to Outlaws. The day I saw Outlaws, I was like, if they stick the narrative landing, I'm in. And I think this is going to be a game that's going to be a slightly polarizing. And what I mean by that is there are some people that gameplay is king. If your gameplay doesn't have a lot of seasoning and flavor and it's not hitting on all cylinders, they don't care what the graphics look like or what the story looks like. If the gameplay isn't good, I'm playing a game and I'm not playing. It's a game. So if it doesn't play great, I'm not buying it. There are others who, and I fall into this group. If your story is good and it's technically sound and the gameplay is at least serviceable, I'm in. And from everything I saw, I watched 3 or 4 different videos on it, and the impressions all seemed about the same. Roughly boiling down to, and I'm simplifying it, if you're okay with gameplay that's serviceable but not necessarily really deep and rich and varying, but you want to be immersed in the world of Star Wars and a story that looks promising, then this could be your bag. But if gameplay is like king for you, then you might want to proceed with caution because it might not be for you. So for my part, yeah, I can't wait. It's ticking so many boxes for me in what I want to experience in a Star Wars game. Like, yeah, I'm very much looking forward to it. So if it's technically sound and they got a good story, I'm in.
Yeah, what about you, Logic? Is this a game that's on your radar?
All games are on my radar, but I always
that's
reserve.
Cap. We know this because you don't play Final Fantasy VII, so we're not. No.
Actually, if Final Fantasy VII came along now, my approach to it might be different. I mean, I am playing Shin Megami Tensei 5, Vengeance, Unicorn Overlord, and Ayuden Chronicle.
So I was going to say that, Logic. Like you're playing those games. Like you should maybe just check out Final Fantasy. I think you might like it.
I don't have time for old games. I just focus on new games.
Oh my goodness. Okay, go ahead.
Oh wait. I gotta jump in real quick. Beyond Good and Evil 20th Anniversary Edition remaster of an old game. You must play that. You must clear time in your only new game schedule to play this game. It's
I don't know what happened. That one may have come out the week before my Call of Duty Epiphany. So yeah, it may just be 1 week out of my change of heart.
Well, it's on sale right now. I mean, it's $17.50 Canadian, so it's even cheaper for you.
Yes, I may wishlist.
What are you talking about?
I know you said it was free on the Epic Game Store, so I may go over there and
No, that's
just claim
Fist. No, you're
Okay.
mistaken that for Fist. Yeah,
Okay.
Fist, Forged in
Oh, that's
Shadow.
right. That's right.
That's free on Epic, yeah. And I'm like probably close to the end of that, I think, and that's really good. I'm really having a good time with that. I should also add that playing native 4K probably was sitting around 80 frames, but it was sometimes bouncing a little bit, which was weird. But as soon as I turned on DLSS, it is literally 4K 120 locked, not a single frame drop, and my PC is not nearly as powerful as yours. I'm on a 4070. So
Okay.
I just want to throw that in there.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I mean those are all games that I might eventually check out. They're just not like in my primary queue right now. But yeah, Star Wars Outlaws I'm keeping an eye on. It is one that needs to stick the landing. And so we'll wait and see. The things that have come out that you have mentioned that are encouraging, right? The comparisons to Splinter Cell, I was not a fan of Splinter Cell, so that's not necessary. When I hear things about where its gameplay cuts close to the Division 2, then those might be things that catch my interest. But the comparisons to Splinter Cell don't make me get down out of my seat.
So logically, so would a compelling story kind of offset that for you?
No.
It would. Okay.
No, I mean, and I think Ramon is spot on. Like there are gameplay mechanics people, there are story and narrative people, there are graphics people, and in the points of that star, for some people those things are all balanced. For lots of people, most people, one leg of that star is longer than the other. I am definitely a gameplay mechanics person. I don't need story. I mean, that's what I play tons of flight sims and vehicle sims, car sims. I don't need a story. My cliche about racing games is, just stop putting all this role playing like dynamic stuff in my face. Just give me a bunch of cars and a bunch of tracks and a bunch of, and the remainder of them to unlock as I proceed through challenges, and that's all I need you to do. So, I am becoming more appreciative of them. Like I said, as I've stepped off the stage and stepped away from Call of Duty, but they're not going to draw me over the line if game mechanics are a problem.
Yeah, no, I hear you. I mean, I'm probably more. I would say I'm my older age. I'm probably more on the narrative side of things. If the narrative's good, I can overlook like shallow gameplay or not so good gameplay mechanics. So, so Ramon, are you gonna get the early access on this?
No, I'm largely immune to early access. Like I'm not, because it costs more, right?
It does,
yeah. Yeah, I'm immune to early access. I'm not gonna pay more for it. Primarily, I mean, one good reason is because $70 games in the US are $89.99 in Canada. But even if they didn't cost $102.74 after tax, I still am fine to wait for the official release date. I'm a patient person, so I can wait. I mean, and I know I'm going off on a tangent, but like when you take Final Fantasy 16, I wanted to get it. I was planning on getting it on PS5, but then I heard there was some technical things with like the 60 frames mode. It was a little blurry, blah blah blah. So I was like, oh okay, I'll wait until they patch it. But after I'd waited 6 months, I was like, man, I might as well just wait for the PC launch, and I'm still waiting. So I can be patient.
No, I hear you, man. That's fair. That's fair. I'm definitely going to pick this game. I don't think I'm going to do it early access. That's okay. I can wait. There's some other games I need to get to. But definitely, look, I'm a Star Wars fan, huge Star Wars fan. So when I first saw this game, I'm like, yes, I will be playing this game. So not many Star Wars games I don't play. But
you've got room on your slate in the fall, right? Because Xbox just did you a solid.
Yeah, I was. It's funny. That wasn't like on the list of topics, but the Xbox has pushed the Valve back to February 18th of 2025. So yeah,
I am not mad at them for that at all. I am not mad.
Yeah, I mean they
already drowning.
They have opened up my schedule to say the least. So, yeah, I saw some people. I will say this. Indiana Jones is on my radar. They haven't released they haven't given us a date for Indiana, have they?
So yeah,
Not
I mean,
yet.
so I think at this point I would kind of collect kind of what's going on with Gamescom into this. So
Okay.
blah, 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 blah. So Xbox put out its ticker tape for what it was going to do for Gamescom. And as I read that article, I started picking up on some things that I felt. So what's going to be playable at Gamescom is Age of Mythology Retold, Ara History Untold, Diablo 4 Vessel of Hatred, Fallout 76 Milepost Zero, The Elder Scrolls Online Gold Road, and Towerborn. That's all that's going to be playable at Gamescom that is first party. And so what's not on that list is Avowed, Indiana Jones and the Great Circle, and Starfield Shattered Space. So I read into it. I know there are people out there who say that they hate doom and gloom and the automatic assumption that something is bad. But what I read into it was I said, okay, what's very vividly in my mind was the approach path to Gamescom last year. And Starfield was not playable, hands-on, nor was Forza Motorsport. And I said at that time that I think tells me that there's a thing. There's something. I don't know that it's a problem, but it's something, because in the past, Forza Motorsport would have absolutely damn well been hands-on playable right at the last show that it was going to show up at before it came out. And if you go to look on Steam user community reviews for Forza Motorsport, they're not favorable, nor is Starfield favorable. So, I mean, I think both of those games had problems, at least with how the Steam community uptake on them was. So my point was I saw this list, and this list came out before this announcement that came out tonight about Avowed being pushed back. And what this said to me was that Microsoft is not ready for people to put their hands on Avowed, Indiana Jones and the Great Circle, or Starfield Shattered Space. So, I mean, in the past, that's been indicative of some problem. So, or I guess I would also say, or a delay, because, games that Microsoft didn't say anything about, that were not going to be shown, or that a release date, or that were supposed to be in some release window, but then mysteriously, like, they didn't show up, at a game show, that has typically been a precursor to an announcement about something going on, not according to plan with the game. So it'll be interesting to see. Remember, I've always said Indiana Jones and the Great Circle, that release date and the way that they've approached it gave time for that game to slip. They have, it looks like amongst at least Avowed and Indiana Jones, they've made the choice to slip Avowed. So maybe that gives you greater confidence in Indiana Jones, because maybe it came down to like a two pony contest, and the pony they picked was Avowed to push out rather than Indiana Jones. With Avowed moving out now, I don't think that they can really afford to push Indiana Jones into first quarter next year, like I said that they could. So we'll just have to see how it goes. But it's interesting that none of those three titles is hands-on available at Gamescom.
Yeah, for my part, I'm definitely not mad at them for moving Avowed. Especially like the last couple times they showed Avowed, I was less excited than I was before seeing them. Specifically the character physics. I mean, when they showed that gameplay for the first time, it was the butter knife slicing actions with the sword, and then when you kill the little critters, it kind of like curls up in a little ball and then gently lays down onto the ground. So like just little things like that. And then they said, oh, we saw the feed, change, work on that and so forth. So, I mean, of course delays suck, but man, take as much time as you need to take, because, it would be a shame to launch the game, even after a delay, to launch the game subpar. So, delaying it to February, do it, make it a better game. If we start getting into January and it's still, you still need more time, delay it into June, delay it in August, delay it this time next year, next September. I don't care. Just release the game well. I mean, yeah, Xbox has a deficiency when it comes to, games and everything, but, better to have people screaming at you because you don't have the games coming just yet than to finally drop a game and then it ends up. I mean, how often does Redfall get brought up? You know what I mean? So, it's a tough spot to be in, but better to be in a tough spot where people are screaming at you because your games are being delayed versus you drop the game and then it's subpar. So,
well, it'll be interesting to see how this dynamic continues to unfold this generation, too, because the only real reason that these delays are a thing, or that a bad release is a thing, is really because of Game Pass. That's the thing that makes it so acute, because people are paying every month and they're expecting content to be delivered.
Yeah, that's true.
And so when that production pipeline gets disrupted or broken, that causes a thing, because people have essentially paid you up front. They haven't paid you up front for the complete cost of the game, but they're giving you their money on good faith. I feel like there wouldn't be as much chatter about these things. Not necessarily the bad release. I mean, one of my things is I don't think that the bad release, like, if it weren't for Game Pass, Redfall would not have released when it did. Absolutely wouldn't have released when it did. But they didn't have anything else to put into the subscription service that spring because they were missing everything else in the 12-month plan.
And it was already delayed twice, right?
Yeah. Maybe. I'm not sure right off the top of my head.
At least once, yeah.
Yeah. And so that's a shame, because I mean, at the end of the day, that also, I mean, was a strong lead line that led to that studio being closed. So, I mean, that's a petard that Xbox has hoisted themselves on, and it's a shame that if it were just hardware and it were just unit sales, right, then there would be potentially more time for these games to breathe. But yeah, the worry now is that I mean, it's one of two things: either Avowed and Indiana Jones were running neck and neck for a game that needed to be delayed, and the one that won that coin toss was Avowed, and so it got the extra time. Or the event horizon that I predicted, which I didn't predict was going to be hit until 2025. Well, the math that I came out with showed them hitting production pipeline, near optimization in late 2024, but I felt it was going to be more likely 2025. So one possibility is that they have hit it, and what I said was when they hit the right release cadence with the number of studios they have, what they should have is they should be at a point where they're able to put out 6 releases per year, and that means 2 of those releases they can play with, right? That they have redundancy, and with 2 releases, that means 2 games can miss, and they can be substituted by one of the other 2 games that are ready to go. Or they can hold on to those 2 games and pick a strategic time to release them. But they should be at a point where they're running production pipeline overstock and can actually hold on to a game if they so choose. And like they're claiming they're doing with Avowed, they're claiming that Avowed it has cooked and is ready to come out of the oven, but it doesn't have to, so they're pushing it out. I hope that that's true, but one of those 2 possibilities, has to be the case.
Yeah, I'm hoping they don't delay Indiana Jones. That would be a big disappointment for me, because the optics I have with Game Pass, or how I look at it as a consumer, is that I'm paying. Well, I'm locked in for this year, but now I'm going to have to pay. I forget the. PC Game Pass is
you're
what.
Paying $20. Or you just play, but you're paying for Ultimate, right?
No, I'm paying for a PC.
Really?
Yeah.
Are you sure, man? We just had a thing with you and PlayStation. Maybe you need to go back and double check. And
I'll have to go back and double check. I think I'm playing for PC Game Pass. I don't remember. I actually don't remember. I think
you're paying for Ultimate because I think your kids still access Game Pass on Xbox, right?
Yeah. No. I don't know. I don't think they do. Okay, I don't know. I can't remember. But anyway, so I'm paying X amount of dollars, right? And that dollar investment's going to go up, right, when my subscription ends end of the year. So my point is I look at it like if I'm breaking even, and I look at it just from a break even standpoint, right? Like if I just break even and then all the little nuggets they drop in there, to me that's worth the investment. You know, and what I mean by breaking even is like the AAA stuff. That's gonna be the quickest way for me to break even, and that's why I look at the service. Go ahead, Logic.
Yeah, for PC Game Pass at $144 a year, your break even is you should be getting at least 2 big AAA games. I'll say exclusives. You should be getting 2 big, exclusives in as much as exclusives from a publisher standpoint, right? Going, and it's fine when we talk about Xbox.
By the way, I'm checking my subscription right now on my profile. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so you should be getting 2 big blockbuster AAA, Michael Bay kind of games, right, per year for your 144.
Oh, actually, I'm in the ultimate tier. I don't know why I thought it was a PC.
Yeah, that's what. Because I was pretty sure you've told me about your kids accessing Game Pass still on Xbox.
Yeah, no, you're right.
Like,
yeah, so I have ultimate. Yeah, so
now you're paying $240 a year. And so I would contend, because I don't think it makes sense to look at things fractionally as a consumer. I would contend that for $240 you need to be getting 4 AAA big blockbuster summer game movie exclusives per year.
Yeah, no, I agree, because like the other stuff to me isn't why. Again, I'm a different consumer. Other people may just feel like, oh, I get 300 games. That's the value to me. But for me, it's really. And I've said this on this show many times, and when they announced Game Pass in 2017, it was like, yeah, I want the big stuff. Because that's where to me, that's where it makes sense. That's the stuff that I'm interested in. There's a reason why Ryan Landis calls me AAA BRAP. But that's how that's why that service makes sense to me. It's like for the big AAA exclusive. And one of the reasons why I re-upped is because of Avowed, supposed to come out this year. What were the other games? Vowed, Hellblade 2, which came out, Indiana Jones, and I feel like I'm missing another one. There were like 4 games. What's the other one I'm missing? Shit, I can't remember. But anyhow, yeah.
For this year?
What's that?
You talking about for this year?
Yeah.
Avowed, Indiana Jones, Hellblade 2. I don't know if the DLC counts for Starfield.
No, I wasn't interested in that. Oh, COD, Call of Duty.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, as Lord, as whatever his name is, I said in the chat, Black Ops 6. Yeah, so that's why I was looking at those. So that makes sense. I mean, but and I will say this to Lord Jarinza's point: if it's only COD, for me the service doesn't make sense. But that's what I'm looking forward to. So even I understand Avowed, yeah, it opens up a window where I can play some other games, but it's a subtraction of my value assessment for me personally of Game Pass for this year.
I'm glad that Logic brought that up, and then you brought it up too, because whenever I speak on those delays and everything, I always forget about Game Pass because I don't sub to it. I have a running subscription to Ramon Pass, so because I like Steam and Green Man Gaming and CD Keys and Fanatical. Yeah, they got me. But yeah, I always forget about.
Oh, Steam got you good, by the way.
Oh, they got me good, man. And Green Man Green Man and CD Keys right behind them, and then Fanatical got me a little bit, but yeah, that summer sale, man. They grabbed me by my ankles and just shook me upside down, and all the coins came falling out like Sonic with his rings. But yeah, I always forget about Game Pass. So yeah, that definitely, in light of that definitely makes sense why people would be unhappy about these delays, because yeah, you are paying that monthly fee month after month. When these games slip into a delay, then it's like, okay, just like you say, to justify that cost, you want those big blockbuster games. So yeah, with that as a consideration, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I just want to make a quick point here. Machine XP doing the list thing. I'm not interested in Flight Sim 2024. Black Ops, Indiana Jones, Stalker 2 I'd be interested in. And Indiana Jones, but I'm not interested in Flight Sim. Everyone's list is going to be different, by the way. So, I know you're saying over 6 AAA games, but not everyone's going to see value in those AAA games or want to play those games. So, all right, I do want to move on to Bungie. I tell you, this has been a
old Bungie.
What's that?
It's a good old Bungie.
Yeah, this has been just a bad G's week. Just more layoffs, unfortunately, this year. Bungie has laid off about 220 employees, which is about 17% of its workforce. This is the second round of layoffs since Sony acquired Bungie in 2022. And just some bullet points here. Reason for the layoffs has been reported by some other media sites. Overly ambitious projects. That Bungie has initiated several incubation projects, spreading the development staff too thin. Financial pressures was another. Was something else that was cited as a reason for the layoffs. The critical failure of Lightfall expansion for Destiny 2 added to the financial strain that the developer was feeling. And this is resulting. There's going to be about 155 employees that are going to be integrating into Sony to reduce further layoffs. And some senior executives have been impacted by this layoffs. I mean, the notable ones to me are Luke Smith and Mark Noseworthy. I mean, they have been there for a long time.
Well, I think
yeah, go ahead.
Didn't Grubb put out a correction about that they were not part of the layoff, but management was restructured and they chose at that point to exit.
Yes, that is correct. I'm sorry, that is correct. You're absolutely right, Lodge. They chose to leave, which is a pretty big. Those are pretty big names to leave Bungie.
Yeah, and just to harp on that, because we have pointed that out before. We pointed that out with like the whole Connie Booth thing, but I mean. I think sometimes people maybe haven't seen these things, before. So just to highlight it, draw attention to it, for people who haven't seen it. So when there are big and I've been parts of these, on more than one occasion, when there are big reorgs and restructures at the top, there are people who are winners and there are people who don't win. Now, the other thing is there are people who are caught in the middle who maybe in the restructuring, certain parts of upper management didn't think that those people would see themselves as losers. However, those people, out of that restructuring get either asked to do something that they're really not interested in or really kind of wasn't the direction they were planning on taking their career in. But very often they also see somebody else get the job that they thought that they were the pick for. And after that, they're just like, F this, I'm out. So when these things go down, right, there, like I said, there are people who get the things that they want, and there are people who are left dissatisfied. And very, very often at the executive level, people will make their choice, to choose at that time to say, yeah, I'm just, time for you and I to part ways, right, in terms of the company. So I think Luke and the other guy, just saw that writing on the wall. Same is true for the guys who left Rocksteady, right? In the wake of kind of how things were being changed at that studio, and just decided that that things were moving in a direction that they didn't really want to be part of.
Yeah, no, that's a great point, Logic. The other thing I wanted to note too is that we did learn that there's some project cancellations. The Payback project, which was apparently a Destiny spinoff, supposed to be like Destiny-ish in the third person, was canceled to prioritize development for the Marathon reboot. According to Jason Schreier, there is no Destiny 3 currently in development. And so, actually, I need to pull up Jason's article here because he did give some additional information here as he spoke to I'm sorry, give me a second here. As he spoke to some of his inside sources or people that are familiar with the situation, what's happening. But let's see here. I will say Pete Parsons on Twitter got a lot of criticism and anger levied at him.
He can't get enough smoke from me.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I mean, I'm trying to find the quote here where Jason Schreier talked to some of the people that were formerly Bungie and currently at Bungie talked about Pete Parsons. I don't see it here. Give me a second here. Let me try to find this. But you know what's interesting, Logic? Like one of the things in Schreier's article they talk about, some of the people he spoke to said that like Bungie just grew too big for their britches. And they really stretched out the development team. I know that's something you've kind of talked about or alluded to, you thought may have happened behind the scenes. But Jason kind of confirms these things with the people that he's talked to, that in fact they got too big. Yeah, here we go. Most of the people were critical of CEO Pete Parsons, saying he had failed to take accountability for his own bad bets and that he'd been overly optimistic in his communication with the staff. Some said Parsons and other company leaders spoke of Bungie magic. Where have you heard that before? And by the way, Logic, when I'm reading this, we've had this conversation on the show. We talked about BioWare and this idea that some of these developers who've made great games in the past, you know, they fall off the chair a bit, you know? They may not be the BioWare of old, you know, or I'm trying to think of another studio. But we've talked about this before, but that so they're saying that he spoke of this Bungie magic. But some of the things that I was reading here that and I know some of the things you mentioned, Logic, were that they grew kind of too big, you know, and that this is kind of a reorg to kind of bring them back to a more manageable team, and that maybe they took on more than they could handle and growing so big so quickly, and part of that was, according to this article, was really them growing, like, you know, during COVID, you know, going out and you know, hiring hundreds of new staff members, pursuing a lot of different incubation projects, including a mobile version of Destiny, remakes of old games, new franchises, and those things just didn't pan out. So Logic, what are your thoughts on this stuff? I know you've talked about it. Do you feel like you're spot on? I'm going to assume yes. This is why we refer to you as the architect. But go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I think I
got to give you your flowers, by the way, because I'm reading this stuff. I'm like, damn, where have I heard this before? I'm sorry. Go ahead, man.
Yeah, so I think, I mean, and you're right to kind of throw them in the pool with BioWare. I mean, I think, and I would throw, you know, really Bethesda in that pool too, even though there's some continuity with Todd Howard being there, but then that maps to my, you know, theory, my hypothesis about that, you know, creative directors who, you know, design games formulated based on like what they played as kids growing up in the 80s and the 90s, right there, they hit a point where they kind of hit their apex, right, at a point that gets rapidly overtaken by the new generation of gamers coming behind them, right? That there were things that Todd Howard did that appealed to a lot of us, but I don't know that the things Todd Howard is leading that studio to do really hits the drum beats with the newer generation that's coming along. So, I mean, I think, you know, regardless of the things that I've said, you know, that look like they were right, kind of in the estimate of kind of where Bungie was and where they're going. I think at the end of the day, what we're really looking at is we're just, Bungie has throughout the part of the age that most people know them by. And what most people don't know about Bungie before they went to work for Xbox. They don't know about who they were before they became the Halo studio. But Bungie did tons of stuff before Halo, and one of the things they did was they did Myth and Myth 2, which were RTSs. They were fantasy RTSs that were radically different than like a lot of other things on the landscape. So they have a very storied history, and one of the things that they've retained between the moves to Xbox and to Activision and then out as an independent was just that was their independence. Like they always kept some crowbar in their back pocket that allowed them to control their fate and their destiny and get their way. No pun intended. But now we come to this point where they've passed through this period where, like you said, BRAP, like they've, you know, I've talked about before, they just they just grew. We also talk about companies that are kind of the victims of their own success, become far more successful than they ever expected. I think one of the commercials you'll sometimes hear on podcasts, I think, allude to this notion that, like, for some companies, like, the worst thing that can happen to them in this period of venture capital and, you know, small incubators and stuff coming out of Silicon Valley, like, the worst thing that can happen is for their product to blow up and for that team to just become completely overwhelmed. You know, when Andy Rubin went off and started the Essential Phone company right after he left Google, it was one of the things Essential said. They were like, the last thing that we want is to sell millions of these phones and just become completely overwhelmed by our own success. So that did happen to Bungie, and I think in the wake of, like, you know, helming, you know, a team that I think grew to just in excess of maybe I think 800 something or so at their peak. I think their owners.
I thought it was more than that. I thought it was. Hold on a second. I have to look. I thought it was like 1,300 employees.
Yeah, I'm going to say I don't think so, because that would have made them larger than Call of Duty, and I know, looking at the metrics of Call of Duty has been the largest development team.
Well, this is according to Jason Schreider's article. Sony Group's Bungie shrunk from 1,300 employees to roughly 850.
Yeah, that's employees, and I don't necessarily read that as development team.
Gotcha. I see what you're saying. Okay.
A lot of those would have been like business office workers and stuff like that.
Yeah, the ops side. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Also, I don't consider Jason Schreier entirely credible to base my data and science on. But
anyway. Well, I mean, you got to give the man credit. Come on, man. He's hiding out in the bushes in the parking lot. People are coming out. They just got laid off. They're carrying their boxes full of their office, you know, product. You know, he's there, like, you know.
He's completely accurate in the information that he gathers from former employees of companies. So, you know, I'll give him that much. In as much as every former employee of any company is always going to have a bias to assert, you know, the things that put them in the best light in the company and the worst. But that's neither here nor there. But at any rate, yeah, I mean, they grew bigger than they had ever really anticipated. And things I've talked about in the past is how that leadership team, right, those people at the tops of that chain, they didn't have that training. They didn't have that background. They had been groomed. They didn't have, you know, there's a specific way that you kind of craft the experience of an executive so that when they get to a certain point that they have the right experience under their belt to manage, you know, a company of that size. And I don't think their leadership team have been through that. And quite honestly, I think the stress of that, what I believe is that the deal that they came to, my point is the deal that they, you know, where Bungie was going to go as a studio underneath the Sony ownership was different than what they had bought into when they allowed themselves to be taken over by Xbox and also sit under Activision. I think both of those scenarios, they were very much looking at, you know, kick out clauses and ways to maintain their independence. And I think, you know, their situation with Activision just hit the point where they were like, you know, we just need to part ways with this relationship. It's better for both of us.
Yeah. But you got to remember, ABK was demanding that they have like yearly content releases, and they just really couldn't keep pace with that. And that's a big reason why that relationship just didn't end up working out in the long run.
Yeah, and so it was a constant fight. But I don't know that I don't feel that they were looking. I feel like they understood that when they, at the top, again, I don't think they communicated that to all their employees, that when they came to PlayStation, that they were at the point where they were going to be assimilated. And quite frankly, my guess and my belief, and it's entirely speculation, is that they were looking for their golden parachutes, right? The guys at the top. They were coming there looking to helm like their last hurrah, and then they were, as many of these, like you look at the pattern of a lot of the acquisitions over the last few years by big tech companies, LinkedIn, all these other, you know, all of these places, you know, and big studios as well. All of these places are all of these corporations and acquisitions are situations where they come in, the executives, the founders, the people who got the company being acquired to where they were, stick around for some nominal amount of time, and then in about a year or so, then they leave, right? They cash out their stock, they take their stock options, whatever, and they go on about their business and go on to another career. And I personally think that's where Bungie was headed the entire time, and they were, you know, looking for the things that we're seeing now, you know, teams to be spun out, teams, you know, tighter integration with PlayStation, and so, you know, I don't know that the care and feeding of the studio that they're going to leave behind was, their foremost priority, unfortunately, as they were negotiating exactly what things were going to look like here in the near future.
Yeah, so it's interesting. Like we talked about, like you mentioned, like we talked about BioWare, kind of the BioWare of old, like the Laidlaws, and I forget the other developers, writers that worked at Bungie and that were at the pinnacle, or were part of what I would say was like peak BioWare, and it made me think, like, what's interesting, like we talk about the growth at Bungie, and if you guys remember, Hiroki Totoki called them out. So, like, there needs to be more accountability at Bungie.
Yeah, he said they're really nice people, but they don't really run the business well.
Yeah, and that seems to be some of the reporting out of Schreier, that, hey, the team got too big. There was all these promises. There's all these incubation promises or incubation projects. They went on a hiring spree, and I think there's something to be said. You're right, like, of executives who have run small companies, and then you get so big. I don't think they brought anyone in at the executive level to kind of help with that growth, right? They didn't bring somebody who's been part of that from a larger company who could kind of maybe help steer the ship. But it made me think about, we talk about BioWare and this fall of grace of some of these studios that we grew up, who used to make really good games, and we'll see how the next Dragon Age works out. Hopefully that's a good game. I'm fingers crossed. And there's been a lot of chatter whether or not this acquisition of Bungie by Sony is a failure. I think, in my personal opinion, I think it's a little bit too early. I think we need to see how this restructuring works, and now that Sony is a little more hands-on with Bungie, I think we need to see what the outcome is long term. I think it's a little bit too early. I understand the optics of looking at it and saying, "Oh shit, there's these layoffs now." There's been some key departures in leadership. Sony's getting more hands-on with them. Maybe the $3 billion they spend is too much. It's a bad acquisition. I could certainly understand that knee-jerk reaction. I think it's a little too early. I think we need to see what happens after this restructuring and see what they do in terms of cranking out content and how that impacts the bottom line for Sony. But it makes you wonder. I hope this isn't the case. I really do hope that the Bungie story doesn't end up being something similar to BioWare. But maybe it could be. I don't know, but I hope that's not the case. But again, I do think it's a little bit too early to sit there and say that this was a 110% bad acquisition by Sony. I think we need to wait and see what happens in the long run. Do you guys agree with that that assessment, that maybe it's a little bit too early to kind of write them off? Or write this, or say this acquisition was bad on Sony's behalf?
Yeah, and just to go back one step before that, I think one of the things you brought up, right, is as far as like who they brought in. I think one of the things you typically see at companies, at tech companies predominantly, but also you would hope to see them at game development studios also, is that, and there was no question that Destiny 2 put them on a trajectory to become a business in more so ways than like a creative studio. But I think for a certain size, there's a size of company that you can run at where the discipline and regimen of a commercial venture and a highly finance oriented, business model oriented venture doesn't have to be your day to day. But then I think you hit a size where you do have to do that. And so you look back at, and again, obviously they've gone on to a radically large trajectory, but you go back and you look at Larry Page and Sergey Brin bringing in Eric Schmidt, right, in the early 2000s to take over as CEO of Google. You look at what Helldivers 2 has done, where that creative director has brought somebody different in to be the CEO, because he recognized that somebody with a business skill set and a finance skill set is probably better suited to run Arrowhead Studios as a business that is going to be operating at a larger scale than they have to this point. You look at Kojima Studios, and actually Kojima's not the CEO of that studio, right? He has
No, he's
other
not,
people
yeah.
who are in place from a business perspective. So, that probably arguably is the direction that Bungie should have headed when they got to that size that Schreier talks about, right? And have brought somebody in who is more of that background. But yeah, I mean, as far as kind of where they are currently, like I said, I think the kind of writing is on the wall, in terms of them kind of just being a completely different organization, right? Entirely, than they've been up to this point. And yeah, I do agree that it is probably too early to be saying that the whole acquisition is a failure. And I think, for the Keep the Same Energy crowd, who I'm sure has already arrived or will shortly arrive right soon after this podcast is over and be, writing dissertations all across the comments. I've also not said that the Activision acquisition was a failure. The ATVI acquisition has caused an inflection point of things that they've come to realize since the acquisition that were not what they thought it was going to be. But as I always say, from a strategic perspective, I almost never have a problem with Microsoft's strategy. They're doing the right thing by adjusting it. My problem with them has just been the handling of the PR and sometimes how they handle marketing and messaging and how they manage their production pipeline. But I also would not, by any stretch of the imagination, say that the ATVI acquisition has been a failure. They're making adjustments, which is the same thing that PlayStation is having to do with Bungie. So calling it a failure, I mean, almost never is an acquisition, and regardless of the whole integration time, like we know that it takes time to integrate a smaller company into a larger company and change the culture and get them to line up in the chain of command and blah, 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 blah. But I think from a business and a financial impact perspective, it's also not going to all be Tiffany Cup-Links when you bring on a new company. There's going to be, I think, some very surface level financial indicators that may say things are good. There's the extra revenue that shows up, and that start gets counted. But the cost sink isn't necessarily transparent. The increased costs that come along with then making the changes, some of the things that wind up becoming sunk costs and have to be written off because you cancel projects that were underway. Like, Microsoft doesn't talk about it a lot, but obviously, right, when they onboarded Bethesda, and I'm sure absolutely in the wake of onboarding Activision, because we've already heard about this, and within their own studios, they've also gone and canceled a ton of projects that were in flight. Both within studios that they already own and as they've onboarded new studios. So that's sunk cost that has to be written off, right, on their balance sheet. Things like that are always going to happen, and then there's going to be some period of time before those companies really integrate to the point of really being a financial upside in their entirety. So, yeah, I agree. It's way too early to be calling any of these acquisitions a failure. Embracer's acquisitions, I would absolutely call a failure.
I mean, yeah.
No, you said it. I mean, you said it far, far, far more eloquently than I could ever put it. But yeah, I concur that it's just way too early to make that sort of a judgment. And I think also the terms that, the clauses that Sony put in that contract kind of speak to what they foresaw was going to be happening with Bungie to begin with. At least that's the way I see it. So I think I think anybody who thinks that Sony is kind of blindsided by what's going on might take another look at the terms in the contract, because to me that speaks to them saying, okay, we really want the talent here. They have the IP, but Destiny is almost finished, but there's some of the best in the business when it comes to yada 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 yada. So things aren't looking good financially there, so and then they put the verbiage into the contract that reflects what they'll be able to do should Bungie not be able to hold up their end of it. So I think, and then with the talent moving over to work in Sony, SIE, I mean, in a lot of ways, at least for those people, it's a win-win. You know what I mean? So I think there's a strong chance for this to work out for the better for, a number of reasons. But yeah, I definitely wouldn't think of writing it off yet. It's way too soon for that.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree. I mean, I think it's we'll have to wait and see. But it's interesting. I mean, it's really interesting. I mean, I think especially because it's Sony, right? I mean, this is kind of their first. I believe this is their biggest acquisition from a gaming standpoint. So there's a lot of eyes on this, right? So it's going to be interesting to see what happens next. I was kind of surprised though that in reading Shrine's article that there's no Destiny 3 in development, and to me that's like their biggest IP that they have right now, and who knows how Marathon's going to do it. It's an extraction based shooter, and I know there's a lot of resources that have been shifted over to that game that's supposed to release in 2025. And again, who knows how Marathon's going to be received, how well it's going to do. But I'm surprised that there's no sequel to Destiny. They are going to release more content. It's going to be free to play content. From what I remember from some of the articles I've read, some upgrades, some additional things. They're going to open up different areas for players to explore. They're going to try to make it more inviting to newer players. So you try to, because and I've said this before. I played Destiny 1, played a little bit of Destiny 2, and then got off the Destiny 2 wagon, and then it was a little intimidating getting back into Destiny 2. And so one of the things I read is they're trying to figure out how to make the game more inviting to newer players. So, but it just, I'm surprised there isn't a Destiny 3, because I feel like that's kind of their bread and butter, and I feel like that's going to be the big one. That it's a proven IP. That to me, that would be the one that would generate a lot of revenue for them, I would imagine.
I kind of wonder, though. I wonder about that, because it's been a 10-year run. And I think for people who have been there from jump on a 10-year run after the final shape and how epic I've heard that it was, I wonder how many people are like, all right, I've done this 10 years. It was, it was a blast, and then it was abysmal. It was up and down, but overall great finish. And I wonder if they just need to maybe give it a little bit of a break before they think about returning to it. I mean, I don't know, but I feel like after a 10-year saga of this, maybe they might do something smaller before they think about maybe asking people to come back for potentially another 10 years.
Well, it's kind of like Sean Layden says, right? Strangle your loved ones.
Yeah.
We've talked about, maybe part of the problem with Halo is just sticking with it. I mentioned it, I think when we were having that Halo conversation on Gaming Circle podcast, I'm like, look, at some point we need to start asking, is it good for the industry, good for IP, good for publishers, right? To just keep coming back to the mill with like the 10th, 11th, 12th installment, right, of a gaming franchise. Like we're
but they do it there. Like we often talk about the market, like they do it because it sells.
No, I know, but I mean, there's bad stories about that too, right? I mean, Rock Band and Guitar Hero sold until they were doing it the 10th, 11th, or 12th time within like a 6-7 year time span, and then those things got driven into the ground and people got tired of it and nobody wanted to play it anymore. Mm-hmm. So I think and yes, they've done that with Halo, but Halo. I mean, we don't, again, part of the problem is with this, we don't have great numbers, right, to base data on, but we can certainly say that Halo today and for the last several years has not done for Xbox what Halo did, right, in the early 2000s.
Absolutely not. So, no, it hasn't, no.
There's also a... I'm sorry.
No, go right ahead.
I was going to say there's also a creative incubation aspect to this as well. With certain IPs, you can, keep going indefinitely. We see that with Fortnite, but with something as heavy as Destiny, and then also like with Halo, a lot of times if you give it some time to breathe, it might not even be in the conversation. And then one day someone who is behind, one of the creative teams for Destiny or like Halo or whatever will wake up one day out of their sleep and write something down on a notepad and then come into the office later that day and be like, guys, you need to hear this. You know what I mean? But if you're still churning and churning and churning on this, you can get a burnout from that type of content. So a lot of times if you give something, time to breathe, and then, let that creative incubation process kind of play itself out, eventually somebody's going to come up with something that's going to hit. And this is it's a business, but it's also a creative business. So you kind of have to let that human element within a certain framework kind of, live and breathe and be organic.
Well, part of the problem too is that, and again, this is, I think, Rami Ismail also spoke to this on that episode of GM Microcast. Part of the problem is, up until that time, somebody has that epiphany, which you often have, and where people start, kind of grinding the grist right on these titles, is the reality is that the team that's making the game now is nowhere in any kind of way the team that made the game that people fell in love with. Oh, yeah. And so it's just literally, from a creative aspect, like impossible to continue building out the IP, right, based on the thing that people fell in love with, because that's not the identity of the new team. Yeah. Right. And there starts becoming a creative disconnect with them continuing to try to do it. Right. It's like imposter syndrome, right? It's somebody who's constantly trying to do a what was the title that Kevin Feige just talked about, hey, I don't want to replace Hugh Jackman and have the next person who coming in to try and do this job doing a Hugh Jackman impression.
No, that's a very freaking real thing. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but that's a very real thing. I mean, you look at that in publishing as well, when they get an author to finish another author's work because they weren't able to do it for whatever reason. And yeah, that's a very real thing.
Yeah, so BRAP, that goes. I mean, I get and I understand that they keep coming back to the well, right? Because people buy it, but then in the meantime, you have the bad news stories like the BioWare Mass Effect thing, right? Where the IP just keeps getting contorted until finally it's not the thing that people fell in love with. And actually, I mean, the unfortunate thing is, like, today we're at a kind of a generational bifurcation where there are people who remember Mass Effect as a thing that they love, but there's a ton of people who remember Mass Effect right from the dumpster fire it became in the later years.
Yeah.
And jump Andromeda, 5 more years forward. Yeah, jump 5 more years forward, and you're going to have a generation of people who just remember Mass Effect as a bad thing. Right? And that's definitely dope. And at that point, then it becomes really difficult, to take on the notion of going back to the IP, because it's going to have a bad taste in people's mouth. This is the same thing that Ramon and I talked about. Again, it's a weird kind of licensing IP thing, but I mean, part of the problem with any Marvel team-based game that comes along now is people are going to have the bad taste in their mouth from Avengers.
Oh yeah, I remember that. Yeah, that's exactly what happened. And also to also touch on talking about different teams trying to carry the torch. Another problem is everybody has a different voice. And there are some who are agile enough that can mimic the voice of the original creators of a work, but most people, they have their own voice, and trying to pick up the torch and tell a story and deliver an experience mimicking the voice of the previous creator, not everybody can do that. I mean, a good example of this, I mean, we haven't seen the fruits of it yet, but you take the latest BioShock that's being worked on versus Judas. Now, anybody who's seen Judas that's played BioShock sees Kevin Levine's like sauce all over Judas. That's his voice, that's his style, that's the way he delivers these experiences. Nobody, well, I'm not gonna say nobody can do that, but I mean, I could feel pretty comfortable saying nobody could deliver that type of experience like Kevin Levine. You know what I mean? So the next BioShock could very well be a fantastic game, but I would be highly surprised if it's told and it's delivered in a similar voice to what Kevin gave us.
Yeah, no, that's great.
Not BioShock. We saw that with Mass Effect Andromeda.
Yeah.
Different team, different voice. And also, from what I've heard, because I never bothered, it just plain voice or not wasn't that good. That's what I heard. I haven't played it, though.
Yeah, I think we've seen that a little bit with 343i in Halo.
More than a little bit.
Yeah.
So I think the interesting thing at this point will be to to ask and envision, like, is what so the fact that there's not a Destiny 3 in progress rate, what I strongly wonder is, are we at the point where we're going to see that inflection point where, you know, like I said, that the top is really looking for their exit strategy and their golden parachute, right, to move along, which I strongly think will happen like in the next year. And as they turn those reins over to Sony, I mean, does Sony care about the identity of Bungie enough to keep them intact as a studio, or are we going to see them just become wholly absorbed within PlayStation Studios? And at that point, then the question also becomes, you know, they were originally acquired, I believe. What I will say is, I believe that they were originally acquired to be kind of a center strategic point of their games as a service push. And even if they stood outside of it and they were going to do multi-plat and blah, 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 they were going to be a large component of the games as a service push. So do they continue to occupy that space? Because I definitely don't feel like Marathon is expected to carry that torch.
I don't either. I mean, again, I don't want to poo-poo and say Marathon's not going to be good, but I don't know. I don't know how big an extraction shooter will be compared to Destiny. I just don't think it's going to be as commercially successful. I could be wrong, but
no, and I feel the same way. Like you know, the Escape from Tarkov clone, right? You know, I don't mean to call it a clone, but the Escape from Tarkov shtick isn't going to move, you know, mountains. So, and then the question now is that the studio that's getting spun out? So I also strongly wonder, you know, is it going to now be a matter of Bungie being assimilated to the PlayStation ethos and becoming, you know, because Bungie used to do single player narrative story driven type of content, you know. So and again, going back to even, you know, before the Halo days. So is that what they're going to go back to? And I don't think that would be a bad fit for them. I strongly suspect that Bungie could do, you know, a thing that is, you know, as equally creative as, you know, as an Uncharted or Spider-Man or God of War, and would love to see them do that, right, and go back to that. You know, so that's a possibility of kind of what we might wind up seeing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Gentlemen, real quick, I do want to move on to the last topic of the evening, and that is Microsoft's financials. They did discuss Xbox and give a couple bullet points here by the numbers. Let's see here. So the revenue numbers were $64.7 billion. Up 15% year over year. Operating income was $27.9 billion, up 15%. Net income was $22 billion, up 10%. Gaming revenue up 44%. Now, that is mostly to ABK. We've seen the impact of ABK here now for the second quarter in a row. But if you subtract ABK, the gaming revenue was actually down negative 4% without ABK. Xbox content and service revenue, again, ABK drove a lot of this too, up 61%. Xbox hard revenue down 42%. We knew that the hardware was going to be down again. Amy Hood had talked about that, that we will see another down quarter for hardware. But this is just the one thing I point out about hardware, and people got upset when I said this, that this has been a trend with hardware declining 42% year on year. I mean, this is, and Amy Hood mentioned that during the earnings call that it's expected to decline again next quarter. So they're expecting even more decline. September 30, 2024, and I think that just speaks to, I think new gamers, consumers just don't want the Xbox hardware. They're not buying it. And that's because of numbers. You could sit there and say those consoles don't matter. The console sales aren't and Microsoft don't matter to Microsoft anymore. But I think the one thing that I look at is just the demand of the console product that Microsoft's putting out with the Xbox. That's just not. Just people don't want it. The other thing that was kind of interesting was Amy Hood, and this was an investor who actually asked about the Xbox business during the Microsoft's earnings call, which doesn't happen. Satya Nadella mentioned a bigger focus on PC gaming as well as excitement around Xbox Cloud Gaming to more places. And CFO Amy Hood points towards Xbox moving towards what looks more like to us a software annuity and subscription business with enhanced transactions and the ownership of IP. She also pointed to progress with Game Pass and IP that can be monetized in multiple ways. So I'll go to you, Logic. What are your thoughts on the recent reporting of Xbox by the numbers?
So I'm going to take us out deep into the neutral zone. I don't think this is the only thing that's going on. Everybody heard the thing that was mentioned in the earnings call. You can go read about that. The thing that I think the connection has not been made to is the AMD earning call. And so in the AMD earnings call, they mentioned that their GPU sales were down. And in particular, this quarter, the big causality for that was them not selling as many chips to the console space. So GPU sales, their standalone GPU sales to PC enthusiasts were already down last quarter. They went down further this quarter, but there was no additional slippage to their PC enthusiast product line. So the slippage this quarter is being attributed to the trend that they're seeing in the console space. So what I think this is indicating is that Microsoft is not buying as many AMD GPUs, meaning that they're starting to scale down on the production of Xboxes that are being made.
I mean, that would make sense considering the declining demand, but yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, because I don't think there's any way in the world PlayStation is buying less AMD GPUs for the PlayStation 5.
I don't think so.
I don't think they're tapering production on the console, and they're not buying AMD GPUs for the PlayStation 5 Pro if that's in the works. So the only people that would be buying less AMD GPUs at this point in the console space would be Xbox.
Yeah, no, and that makes sense for what I just said earlier about the declining hardware sales. Yeah. Ramon, any thoughts on the financial numbers?
I mean, not really. Again, I hate to sound like a broken record, but
no,
Logic already articulated it far better than I could. Without stating the lack of understanding the nuance of these financial statements and numbers and figures by people online, which, I mean, none of that, that doesn't matter anyway. But Xbox is in an interesting situation. And it's going to be interesting to see how they navigate that situation because, with their consoles, with console sales, and I was saying they were in free fall like a while ago, and their console sales have been in free fall. They're the only generation they're outselling at this point is the first Xbox, and they're telling people they don't need to buy Xbox. Instead of saying also available on, they're saying no console required. So they're telling people they don't need to buy the console, and they weren't buying it to begin with. So, the rumored ARM, and I'm going off on a tangent, but I promise I'm bringing it around. The rumored ARM technology for their next technological leap, quote unquote, console is something that to me looks like if it becomes a reality, it will be something extremely boutique. In my personal opinion, it kind of hovers in the why bother realm to me, because if they were to just shed the hardware, take the hit to the branding, and just go software only, I think that a lot of these challenges that they're experiencing might, I don't want to say it would be alleviated, but alleviated. and maybe I'm looking at this too simplistically, but I just feel like at this point they've already been telling people not to buy the hardware, more or less, and the sales, I mean, they are what they are. So I don't know, it's looking pretty bad out there, and I just wonder what's going on behind the scenes, what the thinking is, because Amy Hood wants her money, and I feel like, if they're going full third party, I wonder what their timeline is for that. My head is just kind of filled with speculation on all this more than anything else.
Yeah, no, I hear you, Ramon. I mean, but we know they are going to. I mean, Sarah Bonds confirmed a next gen console that's going to be a giant technological leap, in her own words. Which I wish she didn't say that. By the way, I don't like when they do that. No. But my takeaway too is also this, and I'm going to pick on some of the Xbox pundits who painted this picture of, at the start of the generation, 2 price points was going to work in their favor. You have the cheaper price point, and they're still doing it. I mean, we talked about this logic the last BRAP round we had, where somebody was insinuating that Microsoft was winning with the Xbox Series S. But then here again, we have the data that shows otherwise. We have declining hardware sales, and Amy Hood saying, "Hey, by the way, we're going to see even decline. We're going to see this again. This is going to be a trend we're going to see at the end of next quarter." And I mentioned this on Twitter, like her commentary, and that she made no comments about Xbox hardware, and a lot of people were giving me a hard time about saying that. And I'm like, no, I'm just pointing out the fact that she didn't include hardware into Xbox moving towards what looks more like to us a software annuity subscription business, with enhanced transactions and ownership IP. There's no mention of hardware there, which to me was kind of surprising, because it's that commentary speaks more of a commentary of, or it seems very analogous to a third party publisher. And again, I'm not saying they're completely getting out of the hardware business. I don't think they're going to do that. I think, to your point, Logic, I agree with you. I think they're going to be more of it's going to be more of a boutique type product. But I will say this: I mean, never. I don't think never say never. I say never to say never with Microsoft, because, Logic, you went through this experience with Windows Phone. They were making investments in Windows Phone, and then they started doing things, and they were saying, "Oh no, we're still invested," and then they completely shut it down. And then with Mixer, we talked about Mixer. They brought Ninja on board, and I forget. I think it was it Shroud? I forget. I don't know if he's the other content creator they brought on board. Pay these gentlemen millions of dollars, and then shortly after just canned the whole thing. I'm not saying that's 100% going to happen here with Xbox, but what I'm saying is that there's some cautionary tales here, and when you see declining hardware, it wouldn't surprise me at some point if they did decide to abandon hardware. So
yeah, and it should be said, I didn't just go through this with Windows Phone. I've gone through this literally with I went through this with tablet PC. I went through this with Windows Phone. I went through this with Zune. I went through this with the Microsoft Band. I went through this with the Microsoft Duo. All of their old gaming products, like the Sidewinder. Like, I used to have plenty of like Microsoft Sidewinder, like joysticks and game pads, and even the Microsoft, I can't remember what it's called, but like I think it was just called the Microsoft Sidewinder Commander, which was like this floating pod on a base that you used to use to control like real-time strategy games. So I've done this with every single Xbox product. Like, it doesn't change, and it hasn't just been one. But I will say, I'll stick my toe in the door and say, however, I do think that they're entirely capable, and I think it's what they will do. I do think it's entirely capable, as you mentioned, I've talked about before, of them making a boutique business that is very much like Microsoft Surface, and having that be low volume, having it be like the example product that they provide, and it also doesn't preclude them from doing the same thing they do with laptops, which is licensing that out to other vendors. They have a stable of their typical culprits, so Samsung, Lenovo, Dell, and allowing them to make Xbox branded hardware. It could very well be the approach path that they take with their handheld. It would probably make sense. It's what they did with their VR headsets. So, I think that's and then their own device that they would make would be, again, like the boutique kind of higher end thing that might be a little bit more expensive. That would be, for the hardcore faithful. And I think they could, they're constantly wanting to reach, other consumers, and they've come up with this whole thing about putting it on different screens. Maybe the way to reach those other consumers is to, let some of these other vendors make them, position them differently at retail, and make them lower cost, but maybe have the same capabilities as nearly an Xbox Series X. I don't know how well they would do about that, but that might be a more difficult play. But in the handheld space, I feel like those vendors could definitely do those things, and they're doing them now. The problem is they need to get the cost down.
Yeah. No, I don't disagree with logic. Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what happens in the future. Again, I'm not saying they're totally getting out of the hardware space. I'm just saying, just based on their behavior with other products, declining hardware, it wouldn't surprise me if that happened. But I don't disagree with you, logic. I could see it be a boutique too, because the other thing too is like, we know that I forget, I don't know how many, was it 20? How many Game Pass subscribers are on console? Is it 25 million? I don't remember.
Well, it's 37 million, but people will disagree with me. But I will say they've confirmed that it's 37 million, but that includes the 11.75 million or so, or basically 12 million Xbox Live Gold subscribers that they just recently flipped to become Xbox Game Pass Core.
Yeah, so I think I don't think they'll get out of the console space anytime soon, because I feel like they have to they have to account for those potential loss of subscriptions. So where do those people go, right, to access Game Pass? Are they going to buy PCs, or they get like how do they access that service without having the Xbox hardware? So
on the Amazon Fire Stick.
Well, that's a good point.
Which Satya couldn't even remember the name of during the earnings call.
No, he did. Hey, he's got a lot on his plate, Logic. Give the man a break, man. Come on. No, that's a great point. I didn't even think about that. Because I was thinking well, how do they, where do they migrate those people to? They don't want to lose those subscriptions, but you're right. The Amazon Fire Stick is a cheaper option, and I could see that as maybe for some that may be a suitable substitute. Go ahead, Ramon.
I wonder just how. I don't know. I don't know enough about, I don't, know enough about that side of the business and the, all of the telemetry that they have access to and the data and everything. I just wonder, Game Pass sitting at 30 plus million subs, if the Fire Stick thing in lieu of hardware would actually do what they are hoping it'll do.
And I was making a complete joke.
Okay. I had to step away, so I just came in hearing that. So
Ramon heard Fire Stick. It was like, oh, wait a minute.
Yeah. Although, what I have said is, look, what I've said is that in making this pivot, right, they need to fish or cut bait. Right, and they need to burn some bridges. I think is the only way that they're going to go about making it. And look, there are just some consumers that they're going to have to abandon and orphan. And maybe those are your high end consumers. Maybe those are your consumers in the middle. So there's all this thing about the Series S was a great thing, and I'm not going to disagree that the Series S was a great economic play that they thought was going to work out well, and to a certain extent has, because they've sold more Series S's than they have Series X's. But the problem is that thing is proving a hamstring for software developers who are constantly trying to move the ball forward. And, so are you going to continue to allow that thing to be your Achilles heel for your high-end console? And so I feel like, look, you've got cloud, in terms of fidelity of experience, you've got cloud, you've got the Series S, and you've got the Series X. And maybe I think the Series X and a SKU like that can continue to exist alongside cloud, because people have an expectation that they're going to get a lesser experience on cloud. And maybe you need to abandon the thing in the middle. And so what I've said is, in making this pivot, particularly into the next generation, maybe what they need to do is they need to just cut loose the Series S consumers and say, hey, if you've got a Series S now, that will continue to be supported. Your low-end experience now is cloud. And so now you can have the boutique box or you can have cloud. And we'll continue to support the Series S until we end of life the thing, but there is no longer a low-end hardware experience in the Xbox brand. I take it back. That experience is now the handheld. But you people who bought the Series S, you're the ones who are going to be abandoned. You can either transition to cloud or transition to the handheld.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, actually.
Player. He says 80% of all Game Pass subscribers are all through, which means they are on console. So if they kill a console, they kill 80% or more of their Game Pass subscribers. I think that's your point, Lodge. You have to cut bait.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't know. I haven't heard that 80%. I haven't read that anywhere. Players, you have a link for that? Please drop it in the live chat because I haven't seen that 80% number. Have you seen that, Logic or Ramon? Have you guys seen that? He's saying the FTC. I don't recall that, but maybe it was.
I haven't seen it, but I'm not going to hard disagree with it. I mean, what we said back when we were on the 25 million number is that the vast majority of your Game Pass subscriber base is on the console, but your problem that you have now is you're not selling the console, and if the console was supposed to be your primary conduit to getting more Game Pass subscribers, that is now stalled out. And so, are you going to continue? Are you going to continue pumping money into that and invest when it's no longer a viable growth strategy?
Well, it's not. It doesn't make sense. I mean, you're thinking about manufacturing, right? And then you go to R&D, new hardware. I mean, if you're negative growth, I mean, I don't disagree with you, Lodge. At some point, you may have to make a hard decision. The juice may not be worth the squeeze.
And then on the other side of the fence, from what I've heard, because like I said, I don't subscribe, but I hear that the Xbox app on PC is pretty bad. So, I mean, if you have a subpar experience on PC who would rather play their games from Steam anyway, then it's not like, as long as the service is subpar, they're not going to get PC gamers en masse like they want. So they're going to have to figure out a way to retain that 80%, from the console user base. Meanwhile, while all this is going on, PlayStation is starting to show their horns, as you've experienced, BRAP.
Hey, fuck PlayStation.
Dude, that pisses me off on secondhand. Like,
this is the behavior you get when there's no competition.
No,
exactly.
Absolutely. No, seriously.
All these people who keep saying RIP Xbox, this is what they're going to experience.
Look, seriously, fuck PlayStation. Seriously. You guys, I'm being dead serious. I am not happy with PlayStation right now. What they're doing, anti-consumer. Go ahead, Logic.
And the behavior also, I will contend, the behavior also disproves the notion that, they're not going to raise prices if Xbox goes away.
Oh, no, they will. Absolutely. Absolutely they will. I agree 110%.
And this is why it just blows my mind when people are like, Xbox needs to go away, blah, blah, blah. It's like, they haven't, PlayStation hasn't really had any competition to begin with, which, I mean, okay, let's walk with that for a second. Let's say, Xbox hasn't been viable competition for PlayStation for a while. Let's say that's true. Even though that might be true, the thing is even though they may not have been, competing with PlayStation on a level, a viable competition, but what you have is that guy who, like, you're running the race and you're kind of leaving him behind, but he's still there, and if you stumble, he'll run right past you. So there's always that possibility that that competitor who's a good ways behind you can walk you down if you trip. But if you don't have that person running behind you, then suddenly you're like, well, what are you going to do? I'm the only game in town. What are you going to do? Go to Nintendo?
Xbox is like me in a Call of Duty domination match. I'm the guy who always goes for the far domination point that's back in the enemy territory, because I'm going to get shot and killed a lot of times. My KD is going to get hurt, but what I'm going to force the other team to do is to pay attention to that rearmost domination point and not feel like they can just abandon it and attack the other 2 points.
Yeah.
And as a person who has never touched a COD thing, I only conceptually know what you're talking about.
That's funny, man. That's funny. Well, look, gentlemen, we are out of topics and I'm out of time. So I do want to wrap up the show here.
BRAP, I gotta hold you up. I gotta hold you up. So the chat has no idea what you're talking about when you say F PlayStation.
Oh, well, you know what? I will be making a video shortly. So if you're not subscribed to the channel, I suggest that you subscribe to the channel, hit the bell notification so you're alerted when I go live or when a new video comes out, because I will be doing a video on PlayStation's archaic, heavy-handed, anti-consumer policies. Because I am not a PlayStation fan right now. I am not happy with how PlayStation has treated me as a consumer. I've spent thousands of dollars over the last 20-something odd years. And, we're going to talk about it on a BRAP rant. But, hit that like button, subscribe, hit the bell notification. So, player, you are onto something here. And again, I think that's the conversation around digital. Everyone's like, oh, digital's great. Digital's great. Hillary loves digital. She loves it. It's great. Monica was a little more physical, but Hillary loves digital. You got to make America great again. You know what I'm saying? What I want to know is how the U.S. can't get a gold medal in shooting, but that's another conversation. Anyhow, I want to thank everyone in the live chat for joining us. Thank you so much. Remember, BRAP VIP tier, at $2.99 a month, and gives you the opportunity to win free giveaways a month. So we'll be doing a free giveaway actually next week. Middle of this month. We'll be doing a free giveaway. War says I stick to physical when I can. It's actually a smart choice given my recent experience. But I want to thank, again, everyone in the live chat. Please hit that like button if you haven't done so already. Subscribe, hit the bell notification. And our guest, Ramon Terrell. Ramon, always a pleasure having you on. If you want to be found, please let everyone know they can find you.
Hey, it was a pleasure as always. Thank you so much for having me. It's always a blast. Always learn from you guys when I'm on the show. For anybody who wants to find me, Ramon _Terrell on Twitter. I refuse to call it X because it's ridiculous. I don't know much longer I'm going to be on there because I'm starting to get nauseous with what's going on over there on Twitter. But
and by the way, even the odor of Twitter X is obnoxious. Like, what a ball licker Elon Musk is. Just terrible.
Oh, yeah, he's pretty.
He's like, yeah, I'm gonna fight the guy from Venezuela. I'm like, Elon, go ahead, go down to South America, dude. Fuck around and find out. Like, you're not. I got family from South America. Go ahead.
Well,
go down there. You will. They will make you disappear. You'll find that you will be in an acid container somewhere, and they'll just dump the remains over in the Amazon. But go ahead.
Well, first of all, you can't even wear a cowboy hat in the right direction, and you're talking about going to South America, so sure. But anyway, and then basically anywhere online, just look me up by my name, and you'll find me. If you like epic fantasy humor, urban fantasy, look me up by my name. You find my stuff. Enjoy your games, have fun, and real quick, PC guys. I know you like Steam, but if you don't want to experience what BRAP has experienced with PlayStation right now, maybe give Epic a little love. Just give them a little love. They give us free games, weekly, bi-weekly, something like that. So give Epic a little bit of love. Keep Steam at least a little on their toes. And you prevent these types of situations happening when these corporations start to grow their horns and sharpen their teeth, because where are you going to go?
Absolutely.
That's a great point, Ramon. Yeah.
If you can afford to be multi-platform, even just dual platform, diversify. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. Don't buy all of your titles on one platform, because just like BRAP is saying, and I went through this with Steam, I went through this with Xbox. If at any point in your time, even if you decide, I went through this with Apple, even if you decide to just dip out for a number of years, like you don't want vendor lock-in. You don't want to feel obligated to stay where you're not wanted because you have a bunch of content there, and you can't. You've coupled it to who you are as a person, and you can't imagine abandoning it. You should never allow yourself to be in that position with any vendor. You should always be willing to cut ties, go scorched earth, leave that stuff behind,
Yes,
go
sir.
on to a better consumer experience, even if you have to reinvest. But while you're there, diversify, buy stuff different places so that if you choose to abandon one, you have stuff somewhere else.
Yeah, that's a great point, Logic. I mean, like Sony's convinced that I actually give a fuck about my trophies. I don't, Sony. I don't. My identity is not tied to my trophies. And I'm going to put out a video. I'll talk about this more. So please, you subscribe, hit the bell notification, so you're not going to want to miss this rant. But I'm sorry. Go ahead, Logic.
No, that was it. I'm done.
All right, cool. Well, Logic, I don't know if you want to be found, but if you do, let everyone know where they can find you.
You can catch me on the Enough to Keep Going weekly games podcast over on the E2KG Network podcasting channel. You can catch my gaming videos over on the Rounding Off Infinity gaming channel on YouTube. And you can catch my stuff that I write over at the Rounding Off Infinity blog, roundingoffinfinity.blog.
Awesome. And Warwana said BRAP is fired up today. I love it. It's because it's Friday, man. It's the weekend, so I'm a bit fired up. And I'm really fired up because of the whole PlayStation thing. Like, that really, really rubs me the wrong way. And the way, and I'll share this in the video, the way that I was treated was very unprofessional, very not pro-consumer. And it's like, you know what? Fuck you, Sony. You guys make a lot of money. Come on. Do better to your consumers who have spent a lot of money, thousands of dollars. It's terrible. So, all right.
If I can just jump in real quick, I'm sorry. Wara Wana also, where they say Epic is no better. Look how Sweeney has gone back on things and so forth. You're absolutely right. And that's my point. Yes, it's patronizing a company that's no better, but none of them are any better. If it's a mega multi-$100 billion corporation, they all have blood on their hands. Like I can't. If there's an ethical one, I am not aware of them. So if you're patronizing mega corporations, they're all garbage ethically. So the only way to keep them from rearing their horns and biting you is to try to keep them competing with each other for your dollars. So I mean, and I know you're not insinuating that that that's not the case, but I just want to say for anybody else who might have read that as well is, you're basically feeding both sharks so they don't turn on you. As much as that sucks.
Yeah, no, definitely. So, Ryan Landis, I hear you, but I'm not doing that. Anyhow, again, everyone, thank you so much in the live chat for hanging out with us this evening. Really appreciate the support as always. And there's a BRAP rant coming. You're not going to want to miss that. And outside of that, enjoy your weekend. Have fun playing video games because ultimately that's what it's all about. It's about having fun. And we will catch you next Wednesday. For our regularly scheduled BRAP, 9 p.m. Eastern time, but there will also be a BRAP rant coming soon. So, subscribe to the channel so you can listen to that rant. Or also, for programming updates, follow me on X, Twitter, BRAP_podcasts. But we will catch you next time. Thank you again, everyone. Have a great weekend. We'll see you next time.
All right, everybody.